Hey, we are live. What is happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic or has had a fantastic weekend. Coming up on the last week of July 2020. That's right. We made it a little over 7 months into COVID territory. Thought we were supposed to be out of this by now. Anyway, if it's not too much to ask the auto manufacturers to maybe give us something worth talking about. Then again, I guess everybody's working from home. It's a little bit difficult to have those test sessions and I don't know, whatever you call them when you get everybody together and start having a bunch of conversations about what's supposed to be coming down the pipe in the next couple of years. Looks like Dodge doesn't really have much for us though. Speed Freak, what's up, man? Alex Andrews, what's kicking, man? So that's kind of the topic of discussion tonight. With the big reveal that came out, I guess, as somebody that's big into Mopar, I'm supposed to be all worked up over that, right? Well, the problem is there's not much with Mopar that I can get excited about. I'm not going to get excited about another Hellcat SUV. That thunder has already been taken by the Trackhawk, and there's nothing on the NA side to get me worked up either, which is kind of the next evolution of where they kind of should have gone, in my opinion. There's not even any talk of the new Viper, which at this stage of the game, you would think that there would be some pomp and circumstance, steal a little bit of that Corvette thunder or something. This has been something that we've been waiting on really for the last few years. And it's been a known fact that the Viper was going away. So because there's no speak of a Halo car from Dodge, I've got to look at, well, what are some other vehicles that I'm excited about? And I'd love to hear what you guys are excited about too, as far as new cars go. Now, y'all know Project Sierra, which is the C25 GMC. It's my 3/4 ton truck. That thing's going to be a lot of fun for me because and I'm looking forward to that because it's an old vintage car, but that's really not the point of what I'm looking at here. In terms of new cars, is there a car that's really worth getting excited about? Well, I would argue, yeah, there's a couple, not the least of which may not even be a car. First of all, take a look at the Bronco. I was initially pretty down on the Bronco, mainly because I didn't like the idea that it was going to be built on a Ranger platform. But that being said, if that 2.7 liter is available along with a 10-speed automatic, that's going to make that thing a nasty little truck to play around with. Lots of torque, and when I say lots of torque, I mean torque on demand with that 2.7 liter. 10-speed automatic will make it snappy if you can get it available, I think, with 410s or something along that lines. Either way, look, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I like where Ford's going with this. See, here's the thing. I've talked about this before in one of my other live shows, but think of the Bronco like this. There are a lot of people that are starting to move away from, well, these things back here. Hellcats, big power cars, things like that. Stuff that is fun to want and it's exciting to read about, but living with it sometimes for a lot of folks, I will say more than you might expect, is a little bit much. The fun factor with a Hellcat, something that makes 700 horsepower, 650 horsepower, they're really not fun at that point. I mean, you can't just play with the car. You've got to really have a plan of attack and know what is ahead of you. And that's why, again, that the older cars are kind of appealing because they're not as fast, but you get all the loud and all the tire smoke without really much of the danger to go along with it with the high speeds that these things can generate. And when I say these things, I'm not just talking about the Hellcat. I'm talking about all of these modern cars. You got the GT500, all of the Hellcat variants, just pick one. Any of the Chevrolet, the ZL1, the ZR1, the Z06, basically everything, right? All of this stuff is obnoxiously fast, and you're getting guys that have already done that, and this is kind of a cyclical thing. They start to move away from the really go fast stuff and move more into the the fun thing. And that Bronco is the epitome of fun. V8 power, gobs of torque. You can strip the thing down to basically nothing, take the thing to the beach, and just have a ball with it. And I got to tell you, with a little bit of work on that 2.7, you can bring the power up 20, 25% fairly easily and have serious power. And when I say serious, I mean for what you're playing with. And it's not going to be anything that's really going to break the bank. So that's why I think the Bronco is worth taking a look at. You see, because there is no correlation between the Bronco and the Jeep, even though, yeah, when I say Jeep, I mean Wrangler and the Gladiator and all the other variants thereof. There's no V8 option there. There's no turbo option. There's no real good reason to try to put a comparison between the two, because the torque rating is going to be so much higher with that 2.7 versus anything that you're going to see out of the Jeep. So when you look at it from that point of view, I mean, it's got the Jeep beat hands down. And a lot of guys, mark my words, there's going to be a ton of Hellcats rolling up into Ford used car lots for that particular reason. And again, it just kind of goes with the normal progression of things. Guys will get these cars, get high performance cars, and find out that they're not quite as fun, especially nowadays. They're just not quite as fun as you would want them to be. And when the excitement goes away, and this is something real to consider, when you stop being spooked of the car and when the excitement goes away, that's when you start to look at other avenues to have fun. These are entertainment dollars, right? So it only stands to reason that, you know, vehicles like the Bronco, which are freaking scooters, which are going to cater to that crowd, are going to be so popular. Here's the other thing to consider too. Most of the guys that are new to Mopar come from a Ford background. That's just kind of how the demographics come together. Most of the guys, as a matter of fact, that fall into the Challenger camp and the Charger camp for that matter, but most of those folks came from, especially if they are of a certain age, Fox body and SN95 Mustangs. So, and S197 Mustangs. That's where most of the buyers came from for these cars. So since there is no naturally aspirated variant to speak of, at least nothing that's new from Mopar, there's a lot of folks, and I've talked to them, you know, I got friends of mine that are on the Mopar, the Chevy side and the Ford side, and there's a lot of them going, look, you know, the Hellcat, it's a little bit on the heavy side. It's getting a little bit long in the tooth. I've got to run tires on it just to halfway enjoy it on the street. You know, that act is getting a little bit played out. And for most of them, anybody who's talking about getting rid of one of these cars is talking about getting a Bronco. So just something to think about in terms of what car is out there to get excited about. Now that I've talked about the Bronco, I'm going to say what's up to everybody. I'm going to get into my next car that I was thinking about here. CJ checking in. What's up, man? Joshua, what's up, man? Michael Smith, hey, man, what's kicking? CJ, what do you think of the new Bronco? That's what we're talking about. Ruben saying, what's happening? B-Mac, what's up, Ruben? Alex Andrews in the house saying, what Mopar reveal are we talking about here? We are talking about the reveal that really wasn't much of a reveal. We're talking about the Super Stock. We're talking about the Hellcat Durango and the Durango SRT. William saying, good evening, B. What's up, man? Smoking saying, howdy, Mr. Mason. What's up, man? Got the horns up. Speed Freak saying, hey, we a couple years away from the next new performance vehicle like the original Hellcat reveal was. You're a little bit more than a couple of years. You're about 3 years out. Skephack 392 saying, hey, Mason, would recommend a good set of headers for a 392. I'd appreciate it. Cook's long tubes. DESRT saying, what's up, B? Got the arm flex. I like it. CJ Coleman saying, only wish the new Bronco came with a 5-liter Coyote as an option, but other than that, the Bronco is a beast compared to the Jeep. Real talk on that. Oh, damn, what happened? My feed just flaked out. Queasy saying, yo, not going to lie, there was a 2012 Mustang 5.0 for $16,500, 55,000 miles. That's pretty low mileage for that thing. And it seems really tempting rather than waiting on a bit longer for a more expensive 5.7 liter. Go with the Mustang. You cannot go wrong. Just remember, if you want to hot rod it, oil pump gears are first, not a last. Scatsby saying, what up, Mason? Got the arm flexes. I like it. Machine's checking in saying, forward with the Bronco, Gene with the Blazer. Yeah, let's not talk about the Blazer. Me's checking this out. I'm one of them. Drove Mustang for 30 years, then switched over to wide body Scat. Yep, there's a lot of us like that. GS1 saying I've had 5 Mustangs, 2 Fox, 104 Cobra, S197, and an S550. Damn, sounds like my resume. Uncle Stinkford checking and said, hey brother, if anybody has issues with the 2-piece Brembos making clicking sounds at low speeds, there's a super easy fix. Remove the wheel and clean both the wheel and the rotor with a copper brush. That's right, guys. Keep those bad boys clean. Some guys just have that issue, though. My white car did that, and I even cleaned it, and it still did it, and I just figured it was part of life with that thing. Just want to talk about Now 19 Scat. Machine saying, have you seen the 392 Wrangler concept teaser trailer by Jeep? Basically clowning the Bronco. Here's the problem. They're not clowning the Bronco, bro. They're clowning the fans. They're clowning their customers in that case. And to that point, 392 Jeep, we've already seen the Hellcat Jeep. So if we've already seen the Hellcat, and by the way, at the shop, we see Hellcat transplant Jeeps. So we LS transplant Jeeps, 392 transplant, 5.7 transplant Jeeps, best transplant, by the way. But why even bother teasing it? Where's the 5.7 in all of this? Here's something, Dodge. Instead of trying to play the Bronco and say, oh, here's this 392 we put in a Jeep. Okay, so you're going to show us the 392 in the Jeep. After you've shown us a Hellcat engine in a Jeep, you're not going to show us any 5.7 in a Jeep. And do you want to know why they won't do that? They won't show you a 5.7 in the Jeep because it's feasible. It makes sense. And so if they tease that, it's like, oh, that's right. That's exactly what you should do. And they're not going to do that. They're going to show you some pie-in-the-sky BS that is never going to see the light of day past just an engineering exercise. And that's it. So if that's the case, then I'm the one getting clowned every time. I'm talking about, oh, why don't they do something for the NA guys? Put a 392 in a what? We put it in a Jeep. How you like that? 392 Jeep? I'm going, Jesus Christ. Okay. It's one of those types of feelings that you get with Mopar right now where you just, are you hiring FCA? You need somebody to look over marketing for you. Check me out, look me up. But here's the thing. It's so frustrating to do that when Ford's actually out there doing it. And that's the tough part. And again, Ford has got, you always hear me talking about bookends. Ford has got their buyers bookended with the Mustang on one end and the Bronco on the other. They've literally closed the loop. They've completed the circuit. If you get tired of your sports car, here's this cool ass runabout that still has quite a bit of power that you can strip the tops off, the doors off, beach it, camp it, trail it, whatever. It's a cool vehicle. If you're into 4x4s and you want something quick, you just roll over to your Ford dealership and it's all affordable. That's the other side of it. That's the frustrating part of this, is that Dodge just is not seeing where they're losing out on this. Williams checking in saying Mopar's answer to complaints is just to add more horsepower. Yeah, unless you're NA. EG saying, what up, Mr. Mason? What up, EG? Mr. Blacktop saying, what up, E. Mason? Got fist bump. I like it. Who's buying an SUV with third row and supercharger? I like the idea of Durango Hellcat, but who's this vehicle for? According to their marketing department, this vehicle is for the guy that has one of these things sitting in their garage full time, and they want something that is a powerful, family truckster, I suppose. Oh, and you've got to have the extra coin just laying around to cover the cost on that thing. See, here's one thing that Dodge isn't understanding, and this is where another place where they've lost touch. Again, FCA, a little bit more of this free advice. I'm waiting for the check to come in the mail. Here's where you're going wrong though. See, a car like a Hellcat, a car like, well, any of the Hellcat variants realistically, but when we're talking about Hellcats, we're talking about Chargers and Challengers here. Those are halo cars for 99.99999% of the population. This is the top of the food chain. This is what you're going to spend your money on. This is where your disposable income goes. This is that investment, okay? Not this car plus a Durango, okay? For me, it's this car plus the work truck, the family truckster, the daily beater, the truck for, for your trade. That's what it's for, right? Not a supercharged 3-row, what the hell ever contraption. It doesn't even work like that. And okay, so you want to talk about correlated, right? How do you correlate this vehicle? Range Rover Sport, supercharged. People that own those lease them. They only have them for 2 or 3 years and then they get rid of them and move along to their next lease option. So your idea of your family car being a supercharged 3-row contraption really doesn't make sense because, by the way, that Range Rover is a lifestyle vehicle for people that probably live in the city in one of the high rises. That's who's rolling that thing around. That's not even a mall crawler rig. So it's a swing and a miss. This is a blue collar hot rod. This is what you work your overtime to have sit in your garage, y'all, not to have the family car sit out there outside of the garage. It's just a complete, and this is the other thing, it's a complete departure from your consumer base. And that's what kills me about this. All the while trying to showcase or roll out, oh, we got this 392 Jeep. Look over here. Yeah, look over here so that you don't see what we're not doing over here, right? Again, just frustrating part of the FCA experience. Uncle Steve for saying, yep, I said that on a forum. The 5.7 is the correct motor to put in the Wrangler for sure. Anthony, you saying F-body Camaro, 5-liter Cobra, Hellcat, spot on. Use your younger jerks are as picky about brands. I know it. Destroyer 1320 is checking in saying, hey, Professor Mason, what's up, man? Scat saying 392 Gladiator. Okay, how about a better 392 for the cars that have already had the 392 for a while? Or, again, like I've been saying, put the 5.7 in the Jeep where it belongs. Richard Martin saying, what up, B. Mason Cooks, long tubes, catted mic pipes were installed on the 17th. Man, do they sound good? Nice. I was just curious as with a price for a custom Cam SRT AutoWorks told me it's $59.99. It's probably close to that. There's a lot of labor involved with that. Not to mention if you're getting a Comp Cams Core, that Comp Cams Core minimum cost is $8.99. So just know that coming into it. Let's see. Rich is saying for an unlocked PCM and a tune from HP Tuners, $14.50. That sounds about right. Depending on where you go, it could be any amount that sounds like you figure $750 plus the unlock $850, $950, somewhere around $1,000 should get it done, but it just depends on what else they're doing with it. So $1,400, a little bit steep, but just depends on how they're charging you. Destroyer saying Mopar needs cheaper mods, period. The problem is that there's a lot of labor involved with it. Lightning Blue Meanie, yep. So yeah, the Bronco, that's what I led this discussion with. Number one on my mind, the Bronco. Actually, there's two on my mind. I just picked the Bronco because it's the one most people are talking about. Again, there's a lot of upshot to that Bronco that a lot of people are just flat out disregarding right now. And where folks are really leaning towards that car are people that are either over the whole performance car thing. They've been a little bit disenfranchised with the idea of just this extra power, but no fun to go along with it. And that's, again, one of the key issues. And see, let me just explain what that means real quick. Hang on, I got to do something real quick. Technical difficulties here. So here's the thing. The problem is that faster and more powerful does not equal more fun. And a lot of guys are finding out about that. In fact, they're finding out that it's a lot less fun. And, obviously there's a cost that's involved with that. You're spending more on tires, you're spending potentially more on insurance, and you've got all these other issues that you're running into with these ultra fast cars, namely that you can't have fun with them until you are in go straight to prison speed zones, okay? Where the vehicles like the Bronco, you can just have fun with it all the time. I mean, it might not be that fast, but trust me, there's plenty of power there. And the fact that you can just go tearing ass through the middle of a field somewhere, and believe me, the aftermarket is going to absolutely just fawn over that thing. And let me just, so we're still talking about the Bronco, I guess. So a better point to talk about the Bronco is that it is a Ford, and the aftermarket cannot seemingly get over themselves fast enough. In other words, they are just going to be clamoring to I mean, you're going to see more Broncos at SEMA this year than anything else. It is going to be the absolute darling of the aftermarket. And again, ultimately, the highest level of personalization, performance, everything you ever wanted to do with a vehicle, you'll be able to do with that Bronco. Kind of the same way the Mustang is. It's more or less going to be the Mustang of the off-road. And you might say, well, I wish it had the 5-liter. Nah, you don't. Believe me, you really don't. When you get behind the wheel of one with a 2.7 that anybody's done any work to whatsoever, and that thing's making somewhere around 400 horsepower and about 480 pound-feet of torque, the Coyote option basically just goes away because it is torque like that. I mean, instant torque. So I think it's going to be perfect just the way it sits with aggressive gearing, a little bit of a tune, some exhaust work. I think it's going to be something that's going to be a lot of fun. Mike saying, this question is for me and anybody else would like to chirp in. I have an 09 SRT8 Challenger. Can't decide on a new hood, Demon hood, or Red Eye hood. Well, good luck getting either one of them there, Mike, because they are VIN specific. Now, if you get an aftermarket, then you go Demon all the way. But you cannot get one from the factory, unfortunately. I've tried. Kevin saying, hey, Mason, with an E4 supercharger 2014 Challenger 5.7, is a 370 gear a good option, or do you just stick with the 306s? I would say I'd probably stick with the 306s. It's going to be a little bit, I say that. It'll be lively as hell with a 370. But I think you'll get a little bit more out of it with a 306. Just, if you don't have limited slip, that is going to sting you a little bit. So I'd still stick with the 306. Hang on just a second, guys. Sean, thank you very much. He's asking, could the next generation Challenger be more fun, 400 pounds lighter and less horsepower, or would it be too much like a Mustang? Where is the fun zone? Well, so that's a great question. It depends on what platform it's put on. See, here's the thing. Initially, it was the Giulia platform. Then it was the Ghibli platform, which is a bigger platform than the Giulia. My thoughts are these. If the car is significantly lighter and, well, let me just go full stop there. I wouldn't want to see that necessarily. I would rather the car still be an American muscle car, because if it's any smaller or any lighter, I mean, I get the whole CUDA thing and all of that, but here's the deal. You're just trying to be another Mustang. And Camaro already figured out that you can't be more Mustang than Mustang. And look at where that's heading, right? So the best direction here for FCA would be to do something to liven up, do something to bring this platform into the, I don't know, the 2020s at least, as opposed to something that was basically put together in the early 2000s. As a platform, hell, even earlier than that. Update the platform, make it a little bit lighter, do something with the 392, give it an aluminum block at least. If you're not going to give it any more displacement or power, just do something, show a little bit of effort, okay? And drop the weight down 200 to 300 pounds. In that case, you'll be doing just fine. And realistically, look, the modability of the 392, if you got the paper, you can modify that thing to do whatever you want it to do. My thoughts on it, though, are put a better transmission behind it, and I think we'd all be a whole lot better off. So, you know, I just don't want to see this car go the way of the Mustang. That's the beauty of the Mopars, is that, again, bookends it. Mustang smaller, lighter, nimbler, better ergonomics in some cases, more efficient use of everything that it does. Mopar, pure American, big, brawny, lots of torque, snappy. You know, to beat it, you got to catch it, and you got to have enough real estate to catch the thing. Those are the fun things about the Mopars. Anything in between is going to be less than Mustang or less than Dodge. So if Dodge lowers its weight, shortens its size, and does all of that, then you're swinging too far towards Mustang, and that's how you get your ass kicked. So, excuse me. Let's see. Destroyer 1320. Let's see. I think I went a little bit too far. Oh, William's saying, if you buy a high-end Challenger or Charger in 2 years, it's obsolete with a new model. Well, I don't know about that, because all they're doing is they're just rebranding and rebadging existing cars. I mean, you know, take a look at the Dynamics package. That's all but an SRT. It just doesn't have the adjustable suspension. I mean, you got the 1320, which is like, okay, it's got some gadgets and gizmos, but it's just a Scat Pack core. I just go down the list. I mean, there's a correlated product with every car that's out that goes back to 2015 at this point in time, especially. So my problem is that every one of these things is obsolete before it even gets released. There's nothing new in the Mopar camp. Now, we've talked about the Bronco, answered some questions coming into this. What's the other car that I'm kind of getting excited about? What's the other car that people have been kind of talking about? Well, and for any of you guys that have even been around me for any real length of time, this should come as no surprise, 400Z. Guys, I love the Z cars. I had a 350Z. I loved banging on that thing on Pacific Coast Highway when I lived in Northern California. You talk about putting a car in its element in that particular environment. It is very hard to beat that thing. 19-inch Simmons all the way around. I love the car. What was it? JYC, JDM, probably a bunch of JDM parts on that thing. Anyway, long story short, great car for its environment and so much fun to drive, so much of an enjoying experience driving that car in a way that something like a Hellcat simply can't be. It's never going to be as nimble. Anyway, getting back to it, 400Z. The only thing that we have on this is a little bit of a teaser where it shows the silhouette. It's on one of these like SEMA type blurbs where they're going, and here's what's next. And you see the silhouette of this 37 or the 400Z, which kind of looks like a 240, 260 type of a silhouette, which I'm already going, hey. No, we don't really know what's going to power it yet, but it's probably going to be some variety of I don't know, V6, hopefully high compression, naturally aspirated, something along those lines. They're teasing somewhere around 400, either 4 liters or 400 horsepower, something along those types of specifications. If that's the case, you want to talk about a ridiculously fun car. I mean, damn, it would be really not a line of sight competitor to the Supra, another car that I really like a lot. And in a way, I'm hoping that it's not. I would like to see something come from Nissan, naturally aspirated, just a real high-strung, pissed-off little 6-cylinder or inline 6, whatever they put in the thing. It really doesn't matter. But something that is snappy and just a lot of fun to drive. Weight could be somewhere around 3,300 pounds, something lightweight, lots of horsepower. You could ring the thing out. It would surprise a lot of folks, but most importantly, every one of those horsepower would be available for your use at any speed on the street. And that is where those things come into their own. And again, we don't have enough information on the car yet to really start to dive into it. But if I'm going to get excited about anything, if I'm really going to get worked up, if I want to feel like there's a manufacturer out there that's really trying to drive home the idea of support for the grassroots guys, support for their long-term supporters and customers, that move by Nissan would be a big chunk of that, or would represent, I should say, a big chunk of that. And that's something that gets me excited, especially when you consider that the aftermarket, again, would go bananas crazy with that car. It's going to have so much aftermarket support with wheels, tires, suspension, tuning, exhaust, you name it, they're going to have it out for that car. And I know that Nissan knows that. I mean, take a look at the Supra. That thing is, I mean, it is tailor-made for the aftermarket to play with. I'm thinking that other looming JDM hot rod coming at us could possibly be the same. And I'll tell you something. You're going to have a lot, and when I say a lot, I mean a significant portion of Scat Pack owners taking a look at that car. The reason why is that a lot of the Scat Pack owners moved from a 370 or a 350Z into their Scat Packs sometime around 2015 or 2016. With the big reason being is that it's such a departure. I mean, if you've ever driven a 370, they're really nice to drive, but they just don't have any torque. You can buzz them, and they're a lot of fun. But you go from that, if you just go, hey, let me give you a ride in my Scat Pack, it's a completely different story, and they move to that. Mainly because Nissan, kind of like FCA, has not been giving folks a naturally aspirated hot rod to really wrap their mind around. Look, the 370 has been around since I can't remember it not being around, and there's simply not enough power. I mean, in that price range, it is outmatched, outflanked, and outmaneuvered on every measurable metric by the Mustang. So why would you buy it? I mean, you would have to be kind of nutty to get into a 370Z unless you are in love with the styling and you don't mind and you don't really race the car. You're just out there having fun with it. Then if that's the case, 370 could be just the car for you. And if that's the case, and you've had your Scat Pack for a while, you're not taking it to the drag strip, you're just trying to get out there and have a good time with it and play with it, but you're starting to find out that modding the car and doing anything with it is a little bit frustrating, and you miss the flickability and the fun factor of your 350 or your 370Z. Well, guess what? Here comes the 400Z, and it could be much better than what we're all anticipating, especially if that 400 comes in line as a high compression, naturally aspirated 4-liter. Because if that's the case, you're looking at somewhere around 385 to 400 horsepower, and that is going to put that thing directly in the sights of guys that are looking to get away from that FCA experience, and they want something that is smaller than a Mustang, maybe a little bit less expensive or roughly the same price, but gives a completely different driving impression. That's where that car is going to come in, and it's going to do extremely well. Plus, aftermarket is going to have a field day with it. But if it's priced right, and it performs properly, I think it's going to be a big success. So let me, in saying all of that, let me get back to you guys real quick. I don't want to leave y'all hanging. Let's see. Smoking 05 saying, I ported my 392 manifold this weekend. The core shift wasn't too bad, but good Lord, that seam gap, the seam gaps are huge. Makes me want to fill them with epoxy. Don't even worry about it. It will not do any good. Spend most of your time on the throat of that intake, though. Queezy's saying Ford does cool stuff. Even in the EcoBoost, Dodge isn't showing love for anything without a supercharger. Real talk. And if I didn't have all the money, or if I didn't have the money, I still wouldn't get a Hellcat Durango. Cool, but why? And that's, I mean, guys, well, y'all heard what I said. You know, it's just, they've lost touch, man. You know what I'd have been on board with in that Durango instead of a Hellcat variant? Why not an EcoBoost? Not EcoBoost, a Eco Diesel version of that thing. Could you imagine, an Eco Diesel Durango making about 260 horsepower and about 430 foot-pounds of torque? It would tow whatever you wanted it to tow. It would go forever on a tank of fuel. These are the things I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of something that if you want to do something cool, do something cool, man. Don't just Hellcat everything. That's not, it's not special anymore. At that point, it's, okay, whatever. Lightning saying, I worry about he's talking about Queasy. I'm worried about the 2.3 Bronco, the EcoBoost Mustangs blow up at idle. Well, hopefully they get it figured out. DSRT saying, are trans twos generic or are they for that particular trans? They are for that particular trans. Just wondered if I will need a trans tune revision after having it built. You might. Well, yeah, you will, depending on who's building it. If they're putting a more aggressive clutch pack in it, then yeah, you're gonna have to chill it out a little bit. If they're putting a different valve body in, then you're probably gonna want to chill it out a little bit because it'll just shift so freaking harsh. If it's like Southern Hot Rods transmissions, which are pretty stout, but good God, they're harsh, man. So anyway, just something to consider. Lightning Blue saying 2.7 is beastie. Yeah, it is. Uncle Super saying, okay, my wife has a 2019 Grand Cherokee Upland, loves it. I like it as well. I suggest the Bronco to her. And the first thing she asked me was, does it have a V8? It's funny. A lot of folks have brought up the fact that the Bronco doesn't have a V8. Let me just say this. The days of having to have a V8 are pretty much done. And I can see why the Coyote variant would be cool. And who knows, maybe they put a Coyote in the thing eventually. I don't know. But what I will say is this, that 2.7 at 300 horse and 400 foot-pounds of torque is plenty of power. Trust me. Especially in something that's kind of small. Well, it's not really small, but it's small enough. And also, you got a 10-speed automatic to back it up. So at least you got that to work with. See, and Smokin' 05 brings up a good point. He says, I wish Mopar would set the example for the aftermarket by having a robust performance parts department, like Direct Connection was. I've been saying that for, I probably one of the first videos ever made. They got to do something. The scat packages, nobody even knows what they are anymore. They just don't. I could say, hey, did you get that scat package? And be like, who's that? And that's one of the problems, is that you're not seeing any support. Now, you'll see all the marketing, right? You'll see all the tire, always hearing tire smoke and rock and roll music, right? Well, you see a lot of that. And you hear names like Hellcat, scary name, Hellcat, Red Eye, conjures up some thoughts, right? But there's really nothing there. There's a lot of performance, but there's not the type of performance that you're maybe looking for. And again, hauling ass in a straight line is great the first 30 times you do it. It's still fun the first 100 times you do it. It's not as exciting about the 130th time you do it. And you're pretty much bored with it at about the 150 times that you've done it, Mark. And you can probably burn through that many in the course of a month of playing with your car. And what I mean by high-speed runs is the only time you can really watt like this thing, you can't watt this thing at 30 miles an hour. You guys have seen my drag radial videos. It'll just light the tires up. No, it gets moving, but that's with a drag radial. You can't do that on stock tires. That's the other thing. There's a safety, there's a confidence that you don't have with something that's making 700 plus horsepower. She made 666 to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. No matter what the weight of the thing is, that's a lot of power. So, bring the weight down, bring the power down a little bit, get the thing a little bit more fleet of foot, get it more into like the middleweight range instead of, freaking heavyweight. And I think that you're going to see where a lot of people start to want to have fun with it. That could be your CUDA, right? your CUDA could be your competitor to that 400Z. And that's really what I'm looking for. I'm complete. And let's say it takes the place of the Viper too. So we talked about the Bronco, we talked about the 400Z, the two vehicles that I am the most worked up about. So now let's talk about what do I think would go best. Well, I just kind of let the cat out of the bag. Something like that 400Z, something like the Jeep with the 5.7. That's what's going to happen. Some type of a power update and upgrade to the Jeep to give it actual grown man type of power. 350, 370 horsepower with about 385 plus foot-pounds of torque. You're going to need that. I mean, come on, really? Yeah. The other thing is this. You want to really be cool, bring back the honcho, all right? Make the Jeep a little bit bigger, give it some decent looking styling cues if you want to stay with this retro thing. Bring back the honcho, throw the freaking 392 in it as it sits and everything else that you put it in. No need to detune it, much as these freaking things weigh. I'm talking about you, SRT Grand Cherokee, or SRT Cherokee rather. Do something along those lines, and maybe I can get all worked up about it. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Something that will compete not with this car and not necessarily with the Mustang or the Camaro or anything else. Something that kind of brings Dodge back to its 80s style roots. Something like, well, again, like that 400Z. Let's see what you can do with a naturally aspirated high compression version of the Giulia engine in something that's based around the Giulia platform but smaller, two-door, something lightweight, a real manual with an HP 70 automatic. That thing would be ridiculous. And I'm telling you right now, it would be the absolute formula to get folks away from cars like this and more used to driving things that are sporty and quick as opposed to just being a muscle car producer. That's what I would like to see the CUDA be. Now, I don't want to see the CUDA be some kind of new Halo Viper replacement. If it's going to be the Viper replacement, it needs to be the new Viper, okay? You don't, I don't know. It doesn't feel right. But the CUDA could be something cool. And again, there's a large faction of folks that are just not familiar and don't want to become familiar with the idea of 750, 770 horsepower to the tune of 80, 90, or $100,000. And this is the other thing. We never ever talk about cars that fall inside the event horizon of sanity, okay? They're all just kind of circling in this freaking nutty ass world that they live in where everything is obscenely fast. Every car is a 10-second car. But the problem is that kind of power is essentially non-streetable. It really isn't. Again, y'all see my videos on me playing around with the drag radials with this thing. That's on a street in Mexico that has very good coefficient of friction. That's at street pressures. I didn't air them down, but again, street pressures just kind of trying to roll into the throttle. This thing's, I'm lighting the tires up, feathering the thing at partial throttle into third gear. Now that's fun. In concept. But it's really not fun. You're not out having fun with the car. I'm not out drifting the thing. I'm not out goofing off with the thing. I can't afford to put tires on it if I'm out there doing that. This thing will go through a set of tires in one night. Whereas you could have something like the Supra, the 400Z, the whatever, my hypothetical CUDA, that you could take out, have a ball with, and it would keep you safe, get you where you wanted to go reliably, but it would still be reasonably quick. And I think that's the direction that I would go. But anyway, that's if you're looking for a sports car. But trucking along here, thanks again, Sean. I appreciate the contribution there. Lightning Balloon Mini 70 or 71 CUDA, you go 70 every time. Uncle Secret saying, I'm going to try to get her at At least to test drive the Bronco, though. I would, but bring your checkbook. Lightning Blue Mini saying, or Queeks is saying at Lightning Blue, you're probably right. Dr. Div saying there's a huge difference between fun and just plain scary. I can scare Tanya in the Ram just giving it a small pull, but when we raced the vet in Mexico, she had a blast. Yep. Let's see, GS1 saying forge the 320 internals. Well, what would that do? I mean, forging the 320 internals won't do any good. It doesn't make the rotating assembly any stronger. What they need to do is widen that the ring gap a little bit. Maybe redesign the piston and drop that ring land, a millimeter, maybe 1.5 millimeters. That's what needs to take place. Forging the internals does nothing. If your ring gap is too tight, you still blow up a forged piston. So, that's just kind of how that works. But I understand the point that you're trying to make, and yeah, no, I'm kind of right there with you on that. TRD Camry. I wouldn't ever have thought of that. Machine saying, which engine and transmission configuration would you go with in the Bronco? I had 2.7 with a 10-speed auto. Let's see. Lightning Blue saying the same thing. Mike saying, thanks for asking previous hood question. Have a guy selling a carbon fiber Demon hood he had on his Hellcat Challenger. It should fit on my 09 Challenger, right? I believe it will. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. Also, thoughts on carbon fiber hood. They're fine as long as it's a good quality carbon fiber hood. I mean, you get what you pay for when it comes to carbon fiber bits. So look it over, check it for cracks. If it's wrapped, make sure you flip the thing upside down and take a look at it. You want to make sure that there are no cracks, no spider webs or anything else going on with the hood. If it's on the car, I mean, you'd rather see it on the car, make sure that it fits properly and that it hasn't warped, done anything goofy, things to look for. Donald's asking, hey B, what do you think about the Nitto 555 R2? I like them. I've got a series of videos about the 555 R2, so check out the other videos on here. I've got driving videos. I've got launching the car from a dig, from a roll, and wet driving, and a follow-up video. I got 4 videos on that tire. Let's see. Peter's saying just ordered a Borla Attack exhaust for his 2019 Scat Pack. Hopefully it'll run a bit better and sound better with long tubes. It'll sound pretty good, and I think you'll like it. William saying, to Mopar investing in NA cars is going backwards. Don't count on it. Well, is it really going backwards? Because the Hellcat platform is ancient by all standards. I mean, it's a big-ass supercharger sitting on top of a pushrod 6.2 liter. When that 6.2 liter is only saving grace, by the way, are the cylinder heads. If those cylinder heads flowed 20 CFM less, this thing would not even be sitting in my garage. The performance just wouldn't be there. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's going backwards. I mean, but what would be considered going forwards? 4-valve engines? What revision would constitute moving forward? A lot of people would say a new platform would constitute that. But again, does that new platform also include a new engine family? The problem, damn, what is up with mosquitoes? So it rained down here. This son of a bitch. What is this, Iron Man mosquito? Jesus Christ. Anyway, sorry, I'm friggin' marking mosquitoes over here. So you've got this, the Hannah, Tropical Storm Hannah's blowing in, and where I live is just on the outskirts of where that storm is. So it'll rain like hell for about 20 minutes, and then it stops and the sun comes out, and then it rains anyway. It's just enough to make it crazy humid, and all the mosquitoes are just sucking everybody dry. Everybody looks like raisins right now. So anyway, I lost my train of thought. So next, Scat Pack's in a Nitto Tri-5 R2s. Matthew's asking, what are the best tires for Scat Pack with stock tires? Talk about the, he's talking about the 245s or stock. Yeah, go with the 275s. 275, 45, you got 17s? Best tires for Cat Pack with stock tires. Oh, I got the little wheels. I would still go with a set of Nittos. Whatever the stock size is, stick with that. Go with a set of Nitto drag radials. The new ones. I think you'll like them. And they'll work well at that power level too. Voice Reese is saying the new Acura TLX Type S will probably be my next car. 400 horsepower with all-wheel drive should be quite fun on the street. Yep. And there's a lot of cars like that too. And I'll apologize now for not knowing more than one or two of them. Not really my cup of tea. But the more I start to look at them, the more I think those are really nice. And but yeah, you're right. Any of the Acuras are going to be good, but I am smitten with Nissan, and I always have loved those. That anything that brand has ever made that I've ever owned, I've always loved it. I had a 3.5 Altima, absolutely loved that thing. It would do long, smoky front wheel drive burnouts. Nissan trucks that I've either owned or driven. I had one of them was my shop truck when I was in college. And that thing ran on 3 cylinders, by the way. Literally ran on 3 cylinders for 2 years. So running UPS, running parts from the company that I worked at to the UPS place, which is about 3 miles up the street. GS1 saying, thank you very much. What you said is what I meant. Oh, yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for your contribution to the cause. Matthew saying 275, 40, 20. I think it's actually 45, 20. Go with the Nittos again on that. Go with the drag radials. I like the reason why I like the Tri-5 R2s that are on this car. I'm still a little bit about the fact that they're a little bit bigger than what they're sizing at. So these are 305s that I have on this car, and in reality, those 305s are really 315s when you measure them out. And you think, oh, well, what could be wrong with that? Well, if you've got a 10.5-inch wide wheel and you're basing clearances and things like that on a 305, then if you've got something that's a little bit bigger, that can kind of pose a problem. So I've had to go back and do a little bit of work to an inner fender, but I haven't had a chance to do all the work that I want to do. I'm going to have to actually move an inner fender in a little bit more to make clearance for these tires. All of that whining aside, they've got a very deep center channel, which is going to do very well in terms of having the car just perform well in the rain. And I've got a wet weather video that I made, and so take a look at that one. I think you'll find out why I like the tire so much. Let's see. Chris is saying, what would be your ideal build for a 6.1 SRT8 Challenger? Ideal build? An extrude honed 6.1 intake, one of my camshafts, long tube headers. I'd have the heads CNC ported by Hooper's heads. Almost got that one. That would kind of round out. Probably a through ported throttle body from Fastman, but that would be kind of my ideal. Maybe a move to a Hellcat throttle body on that 6.1 intake. That would be my ideal build for that setup. Stanky tie bars and collars, just because I've had really good success with those things. That would be where I would probably end it, though. I would say I would limit the RPM to about 7,000, maybe 7,100 RPM. But I would have that intake extrude honed with the emphasis on really opening it up. And then I would send that intake over to Sean along with the heads. And he's got an awesome CNC program for those heads. And basically go fairly aggressive with the cam and then fog the hell out of it with a $175 shot out of the hole at about 3,000 RPM. About a 3,500 RPM stall converter with a NAG 1, a built NAG 1, and that would be a nasty little combination. Chris is asking, what's your take on long tubes on NA cars? It all depends on the camshaft. I'm not a big fan of NA. I'm not a big fan of long tubes on cars that have real wide lobe separation angles. You'll always pick up some drivability. You've got to balance that better drivability with the long tubes with clearance issues that you may have. And the cost associated with just buying the things and installing them and everything else. But from a driving standpoint, I prefer long tubes. But from a performance standpoint, like if we're just looking at a dyno graph, the window that you pick up power with a stock cam is so narrow that you're just not going to see a lot. Again, partial throttle, tip-in throttle, that's where a long tube's really going to show its difference, though. It's funny too because people they totally get the idea of long tube headers backwards too. They think, I'm going to get all this top end horsepower. Actually, if you know anything about flow dynamics, you've got more surface area on a smaller pipe, but this long than you do on a pipe that's that long of the same diameter, or even smaller diameter. Well, it doesn't matter. It would still have less surface area. That surface area is what can create the restriction. It's what slows the gases down, basically. It creates friction for the gas as it's flowing through the pipe. What does that mean? Well, it means that at some point you're going to have less scavenging and less ability to flow at higher volumes of air. So anyway, getting ahead of myself on this, but yeah, those are my thoughts on those things. Again, it just depends on the cam. 8237 saying, people talk about V8s and Turbo 6 can move with a tune. My Taurus SHO is fun to drive. Fun car, by the way. It's all-wheel drive, has a good throttle response. It's 12-second, 4,600-pound car. Excellent in sportsman class at the drags. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point. I mean, I don't know. Supra, anybody? Well, GTR, anybody? I mean, those are some things to think about right off the bat. I mean, Grand National, Typhoon, Cyclone. I mean, some of the legends were V6 turbos. And in a lot of ways, they outshine their V8 counterparts, mainly because, well, they're a smaller engine. So, yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with V6 turbos. And, I mean, they're not as sexy as an inline 6 turbo, but they definitely get the job done and, can make hordes of power, provided that, again, the tune is right. And the other thing is, just don't try to sell me a V6 turbo based on fuel economy, right? And one bad thing about turbo engines, and this is just the truth, compared to an NA car, the minute you tip your foot in it, all fuel economy goes away. The only fuel economy advantage it may have would be steady state driving at low highway speeds. But even then, you're only looking at maybe 1 or 2 numbers, and that's it. Now, that could be 5 or 10%, but 5 or 10% goes away like that once you go, yeah, and then you go full watt. And the other thing is, it depends on how the throttle tune is too, because a lot of these modern cars with electronic throttles, and you can see this on a data log, by the way, just by looking at KPA and the intake manifold. When you go to like tip in on the throttle, that thing can click over wide open. It just holds the gear. When it shifts, you might see the throttle blip down. There's a lot of goofy stuff that you can do with these multi-speed transmissions to get more performance. And anyway, let me get away from that. But yeah, the V8 versus 6-speed thing, I wouldn't worry about it a bit. Smoking at Five's asking, Mr. B, how's the truck coming? Now the truck keeps throwing his curveball. So I took the truck out Friday and was basically just driving the truck to drive it. I had replaced front brake lines, the feed lines to the rear brake lines across the axle, put new calipers on it, new brake pads. It needs front rotors like you wouldn't believe, but that ain't going to happen until it gets the transmission fixed and the new leaf springs put on, because they're going to have to be cut out of there. But the This is such shit. So I'm cruising down the road and I'm like, why do I smell coolant? And I'm thinking, oh, you got to be kidding. I knew exactly what it was before I even looked. I just look over at the passenger side floorboard, and sure enough, drip, drip, drip. Heater core is leaking. Fantastic. So bust a UE, get the truck back to the house, get the requisite, lines that I'm going to need. Basically, I just did a heater core bypass, flushed out the heater core, and I'm just gonna have to put a new heater core in it. So, but aside from that, the truck's doing great. It's got tons of blow by, probably needs a rebuild, but it runs. It sounds amazing, by the way. Got the exhaust on it. The 1 3/4 inch mid length with the 2.5 inch pipe with the crossover and the 40 series Flowmasters. Guys, I gotta tell you, man, it's got this low rumble. It sounds so good. Oh, it's got turndowns too. Basically just dumps about this far after the muffler. Absolutely love the way the thing sounds, and it's punchy as hell too. But yeah, truck's coming along. Hopefully here in the next couple of weeks I can get over to Doc Diff. He'll get that thing squared away, and I'll have a truck that I can cruise around in and have fun with. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to reroute the feed line from the fuel pump to the carburetor. So what's going on there is that right now the fuel line kind of goes in between the water pump and the block, if I'm remembering this correctly, and then feeds that 2-barrel straight on into the 2-barrel. The problem with that is that fuel is just getting baked right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a fuel line. I think it's for like a Chevelle or anything like that with a 4-barrel. And that brings the fuel line on the passenger side along the front of the block and then kind of along the valve cover a little bit. And I'm going to have to do some bending and some manipulating and whatever to get it to work with the 2-barrel. But that's going to basically be hopefully a step in the right direction to curing some of that that vapor lock that I've got. But again, it's not going to do a whole lot because, the way that it sits now, it's got the cast iron intake. That 2-barrel is just sitting on top of there getting roasted. So that's not helping the situation at all. But it'll at least kind of help it. And it'll help also to get the thing more or less mocked up for when the 4-barrel goes on it. So that'll be RPM air gap and then pick a Holley. It doesn't matter what it is, 650, 600, 750, it doesn't matter. Gonna throw some 72 jets in it, 74 jets in it. Call it good. It should be just fine. And I had an O2 bung installed on it also. I've got an old LM1 wideband. So I haven't even hooked it up to the truck yet, but just so when I, put a little bit of a tune on it, I've got solid data to go off of. But that's the latest on the truck. Paul's asking, B, what's your opinion on Drag Radial's 262 gears, 17s or 18s with 309 17s or 18s? Go with the 309s, 17s or 18s, doesn't matter. And go with the Mickey Thompson ET Street R, 305 45 17, 305 40 18, I think, is the other tire. Anyway, that's where you're going to want to be if you're taking the car to the drag strip. If you're just playing around with it on the street, the Nitto equivalent to that size is what you're really going to be looking for. Dr. Diff's talking about the mosquitoes. Yep, actually sucks outside right now. I hope your garage has AC. I know mine does. It does if I have the door open. Alex Andrews is saying, if I had another car for daily, I'd really be tempted to get a Mustang because of how easy and cheap they are to mod. Why is it so easy to get more power out of the 5-liter compared to the 6.4? For one, you can raid the parts bin. You can go out and get you a GT350 intake manifold. You don't really have to mess with cams or anything like that, but the stock exhaust manifolds are kind of crappy on the Mustang, believe it or not. And a set of long tubes you can actually pick up with, especially given the fact that it's got variable cams. At higher RPM, they will scavenge and they do really well with long tubes. So there's that. The heads flow great numbers too. But the main thing is in that intake manifold. The 6.4 just does not have an equivalent. And it's really unfortunate. Mopar won't come up with anything, and the aftermarket cannot pull their head out of their ass to get it right. So I just anyway. So there's a bit of a lack there in terms of putting a part together that the car needs to really make power. The other thing is this: the Mustang is light. It didn't make a ton of torque already, so any loss of torque is going to be fine as long as it's picking up horsepower on the back half of the tracks. All that really anybody cares about. Conversely, with these cars, any loss of torque, if you're drag racing, is going to be a bit of a problem, because any loss of 60 foot is a pretty significant loss in terms of ET. So you got to take that you got to take that seriously. And it's very difficult to put a let me catch this son of a bitch. Oh, god dang it. It's another one of these armored mosquitoes. You grab it, you grip the hell out of it, but it's like in some little pocket in your hand. You open up your hand like expecting to see guts, and it just flies away like, you suck. Anyway, but that's the reason why. I mean, there's options there. They have engines that are based on that architecture, like the GT350, that you can use that intake manifold. You can, again, they respond to long tube headers. They do well with tuning. They're high compression, and so you can get away with E85. They're direct and they're port injected. So there's some things that you can do with the Mustang you just can't do with the 6.4. And the 6.4, this is the thing. You got to remember, the 6.4 is fantastic for what it is. It's first of all, it's just a stroked small block. That's all it is. It's really not all that. It's really not all that complicated of an engine, aside from the fact that it's got the, the variable cam. There's just really nothing to it. Where the Coyote is a completely different animal. I mean, really, you're comparing apples to oranges. Aside from the fact they both run on gasoline, there's not a lot between the two that is really comparable. Exhaust and intake valve independently variable. Overhead cam, there's some things that you don't have to worry about with an overhead cam engine. Namely, valve train stability is a big one. Valve train weight, lifters plus push rods, that's a lot of weight. Plus, these things have massive valves. Those are heavy and hard to control. So, and what I mean by hard to control is you've got to run higher spring pressures. And there's a lot of things that are going on in a two valve engine that 4 valves just don't have to worry about. So, all that being said, there's no replacement for displacement, and where the 5.0 doesn't have torque, the 6.4's got gobs of torque. I mean, it's got surplus of torque. In fact, if you ever see the two on a dyno, it's pretty funny, because wherever they do converge is so far on the right-hand part of the page, it's not even funny. So that's why I've always said you could have one of each of those cars in your garage and have a completely different driving experience, one to the next. But the big issue with the Hemi is that they're realistically, they're just hard to do cams on. Because you got to swap lifters, and to swap lifters, you have to take the heads off. Which is absurd. Mike's saying, sorry, this is a silly question, but I like options. Wrapping my Challenger yellow. I like the idea of custom yellow and black design, but think the solid color is more muscle car look. What do you think? I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that, man. It's your car. If you want to put a wrap on it, I'll say go for it. And if you're going to put a wrap on it, man, make it lively. That's the Mopar way, is to be the most lively of the bunch. So if you're going to do it and you own a Mopar, don't just stick with a single color. Go nuts with it. Let's see. Mike Smith saying ran 11.7 with, HC Hellcat this weekend. Nitto 315 555 G2s. Second gear takeoff. Surprised they hooked as good as they did at the track. They don't do well on the street, though. Help from a roll a bit. Yeah, like I say, I mean, you can check out the videos that I put together. I will tell you that these tires will not be going to the track. Right now, it's simply too hot to get a really good number for you. And the other part of it is, this is my street setup. When I go to the drag strip, I use Mickey Thompson ET Street R's. That's my tire. And there's no sense in trying to see if I can make these work when, track prep is, I need all the track prep I can get just to run with those other tires. So for something like this, it's just going to be a pedal fest, and let's see how well it does on the back half of the track. And, if I want to do street pulls, I can do that. That's not a big deal. Machine saying, you think it's possible to fit a 6.7 Power Stroke into a newer Wrangler? Of course it is. Hey, White Knuckle, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Saying, what up, B? Got the fist bump. Saying, would you happen to know the cam specs on a stock 5.7 RT15 Plus? It is, I believe it's 475. I'll have to verify this. Somewhere in the 470s, intake and exhaust. Lobe separation angle is 118, if memory serves me correct. Duration is 209 on the intake, and I think 212 on exhaust. So kind of a goofy looking cam. It looks a lot like a very small version of the 392 cam, which is 477, 4 on the intake side, 65 on the exhaust. I haven't even thought about those numbers in a while. You're looking at a intake, lobe separation angle of 121, and duration of 216 on the intake, and I think 222 on the exhaust, if memory serves me correctly. So not exactly ideal. In fact, it's not hard to put a cam together for a Hemi. The main idea is just understanding that you do have limitations for duration on the Hemi. The hardest part is really how aggressive do you want the camshaft to be, and how much do you want to lose down low to make up for whatever power gains you get up top. Now, you can kind of cheat a little bit with the 5.7s because the intake, especially with the trucks, the intake on the trucks is fantastic for the engine size. Plus, it's a variable geometry intake. So you can go with a slightly smaller, more aggressive load profile on those trucks and kind of get away with murder. But with the cars, you got to go a little bit more traditional. But still, even with that, I don't recommend going above 222 on the intake side. Definitely don't recommend going above 230 on the exhaust side. That's the absolute biggest. If you're looking at cam specs, I would dial that back quite a bit, especially if you've got a 5.7. I mean, something around 212, 216. I think their stock is 194 now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, like I say, I haven't even thought about that in a while, because I'm simply looking at the math of what makes, what's going to take to make it work and move weight. That's the other issue. The point that I'm making is don't go nutty on your cam. You're going to make that thing feel sluggish under partial throttle. And you want to talk about the quickest way to get turned off on a vehicle is to put too big of a cam in that car. And then out of nowhere, trying to make the thing go faster, you want to run a number, you put it on the dyno, it makes a number on the dyno, and then it's, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it made the number, but it's just dead everywhere else. So, but hopefully, I don't know if that helps you out. I want to say, yeah, it was 190. Now that I'm thinking about it, the 5.7 was like 196. Somebody's got to bail me out on this one because I cannot remember it. 196, maybe it was 212. Got so many cam specs rattling around in my head. The earlier cams are actually a little bit more aggressive, by the way. They had a tighter lobe separation angle than the later ones were. You can't swap the two back and forth, but just kind of a bit of a trivia. The earlier cams had 114-degree lobe separation. Mr. Blacktop saying that's for the 6.1. Blacktop saying, A.B. Mason, what is the future of Challenger SXT? Are we underestimating what can be done with the V6? Here's the thing, man. You can make power with a V6. I mean, it's just a supercharger away from being a lot of fun. But here's the downside to it. You're never going to have that snappiness of a V8. But look, anything can be built to make a lot of power. Let's just call it what it is right now. Mods, modifications, right? So, you put good set of rods in that thing, good set of pistons, open up the ring gap, throw some cam at it, throw a supercharger at it, put a decent exhaust on the thing, and it's going to make some pretty significant power. But cams for a V6, it's already a dual overhead cam setup, is expensive. And again, you start getting into everything, that all the expense and everything else that you're going to incur along the way. By the time it's all said and done, you probably could have bought, a pretty decent 392 car for that kind of money. So, some guys like the challenge of going after the V8s with a V6. If that's your cup of tea, man, I say go for it. But just know that you're fighting an uphill battle, and the weapon of choice for that uphill battle is currency, is money. So if you've got the money, I say go for it. 371 drawback about EcoBoost is you get Eco or Boost. You don't get both. He's talking about some mods for the EcoBoost. I had an Escape with the 2.3, I think is what it was called, as a rental car. This is going back right when those things were introduced. I think it was like a 270 horse or whatever. Anyway, it was a lot of fun to drive, but damn if that thing didn't get terrible fuel mileage. I mean, it was terrible. But again, it was, okay, so I was driving a little bit aggressively. I'll admit to that, but yeah, if I'm driving aggressively, fine. But even cruising down the freeway, it wasn't like this, wow, look at all this fuel economy I'm enjoying. It was never like that. But it ran good, so it was a lot of fun. But I'm glad the gas on that thing was a write-off. Let's see. Oh, Smoking 05 is asking, which Kooks long tubes would you use on an NA 392? 1 7/8 or 2 inch? Go 1 7/8 with that. 2 inch is a little bit big for that engine. Let's see. Daisy is forever saying the heater core on my 99 Ram went out 5 years ago. Requires dropping the steering column and pulling the dashboard. Oh God, to replace the core. Bypass the core for now. What a dumbass design. I'll agree with that. I don't think I have to pull my dash off, but if I do, it's not a big deal because it's a 72 GMC. So the one thing that I don't have to do though is I don't have to butcher up anything. I don't think anyway. And looking at it, and I didn't really study it, but where my heater core is in the truck, I should be able to just go up in there and I can take the box out, basically the HVAC box, take that out, and then I should be able to remove the heater core after that. That's, from looking at it, that's what it looks like, but I don't know. We'll see. Paul's asking, what do you think about the recall on the 1516 catalytic converters and computer retune? I think it ain't happening to my car. This has been something that's been coming actually for a while. If you live in California, you have to have this recall done to your car, or else they won't pass it because it has something to do with emissions. Down here, it's going to be considered fine provided that there's nothing tripping the OBD2 system. So, I'm not going to be getting anything messed with my car. I don't like the idea of getting a new operating system uploaded into my car. I bought it for how it is now, and I don't feel like messing with it or dropping it off and putting it in the hands of somebody else. So, nope. I mean, they can send me another set of cats if they want, but I'm not dodging going to touch my car. Doc Dip's asking, we can tune it on the dyno while it's there. I got a good innovative LC2. Hell, I have a vacuum gauge and a timing light also. Let's get what we can out of it. Nope, don't even waste your time with it, bud. Not until I put an RPM air gap intake manifold on it and a carburetor. It just will not do any good to even bother with it. Actually, I will say this though. I know it's running a little bit lean. I need to fatten it up a little bit. So there is that. I do need to put a little bit of a tune on it, but yeah, don't put that thing on the dyno. Let's see. Maha is saying adding an F1X Pro Charger with water and air intercooling, or water to air intercooling to my 426 stroker. Current compression is 13-to-1. What needs changing to stay on pump gas? Everything. I mean, what are you talking about? Pump gas? We're talking about E85? Are you calling that pump gas? Because you'll be fine there, but you're already starting off really high with a static compression ratio, and I would not recommend that combination on pump gas at all. Like you're already pushing it on 13-to-1. Dr. Diff saying, well, you can swap the cam just like it is. Just be careful. That's how we did my swap from the JG cam to the TSP on the other engine, but you can't swap the lifters and it requires special tools. Yeah. To install the springs. Miguel saying, hey Mason, thinking about replacing the whole front of the Challenger. I found this fiberglass hood for a reasonable price. You know much about fiberglass hoods and how they hold up compared to carbon fiber? Well, they hold up fine. I mean, people have been running fiberglass hoods for forever. Again, you got to remember, you get what you pay for when it comes to fiberglass, carbon fiber, or anything else along those lines for that matter. So, if you buy something, a no-name product that's cheap, then chances are it's going to be put together in a cheap way and it's going to warp easier or it's going to crack or whatever. So just, know that going into it. Let's see. Jay Breel saying, hey B, 6.4 cam to a 5.7. What are the gains and how much of a gain with the MDS 6.4 cam and how far to rev it out? Well, I think most guys are getting about 15 horsepower out of that cam on a 5.7. So not a huge gain, but fairly decent gain, and you'll be able to run it to about 6,100 RPM with that cam, with that intake. C10 Mob checking in, saying, hey B, need your thoughts and recommendations on an upper pulley for my Hellcat. My goal is semi-reliable 950s, so I have been gathering parts. Well, semi-reliable, let's go fully reliable. Injected engineering fuel system, you're going to run it on E85, a 275 upper, and an ATI 10% lower. That's pretty much going to guarantee you mid-nines, probably a 950, somewhere in that range. You could go with a 265 upper. I'm going to start to caution you somewhere around there, though. But 950s, 960s are pretty easy with that combination that I just gave you. You're going to run a cat delete pipe, FIC 127s. That's going to be the direction you're going to go with that thing. I think you'd be real happy with that combination. And in terms of longevity, as long as you keep the oil changed in it, you'll do just fine. Don't forget your diff brace, drive shaft, half shafts. All of that needs to be considered mandatory at that power level. That's going to put you just the other side or right at 1,000 horsepower at the crank. Miguel's saying, is it worth all the money to wide body a 2009 Challenger? Do I have to run the stock fenders along with it? Also, what are your preferences on looks for wide bodies on Challengers? To each their own when it comes to the wide body stuff. I wouldn't go out of my way to wide body one of the Challengers. The look is, for me. I mean, again, it's just, if that's what you're into, I say go for it. But yeah, you still have to butcher the fenders up a little bit. There's a couple of different kits that I'm familiar with, but you will have to drill some holes to affix the flares onto the car. Look, man, all I can tell you is this. Just know that if you're not going to keep that car forever, that might be something that can kill resale value. So yeah, just, know that coming into that equation. But if that's the look you want to go for the car, you're going to keep it for a while. I don't have a preferred body kit, again, because I'm not really into that side of it too much. But I mean, you're not going to get away from it without doing some kind of work to these fenders. So just know that coming into it. Let's see. Oh, Dr. Div's asking if I missed his question. I don't know. Ask it again, maybe. Let's see. We can tune it on the dyno while it's there. I think I touched on that. Oh, no, I didn't see that one. So he's asking, what are your thoughts on keeping the RAM on X85 and add a little meth? Don't do it. Not make it dependent, just the track and the tune it, but all in an 1820 PSI. Should I meth or meth sucks? I don't like it. What Lambda used? What Lambda used would be 078. Would be the Lambda you would go with. Here's the thing, I don't like meth. I really don't like meth with turbos. I don't like it with superchargers, but I really don't like it with turbo, especially if you're blowing it in at the turbo. And it's just, first of all, it's not atomized properly. And then when you spray it through the turbo, you're going to coat everything. I mean, it's going to coat everything in the turbo. It's going to coat the lines. Distribution can potentially be an issue. I'm not a big fan of it. I've yet to see a situation where it actually was truly beneficial. Regardless of what dyno times say, the fastest cars right now, the fastest trucks aren't running meth, and they're all running E85, X85, whatever the case is, E90, whatever that, I mean, you're already on a fuel that is dropping your downstream, your discharge temperature. You're already on a fuel that's basically absorbing that. Also, keep in mind, you're running a lot more fuel mass down there too. The only way I can really sign on in this case to meth, and this is where things can get really squirrely, would be a common plenum fogger. Downstream, you'd have to run pretty decent pressure because you'll be fighting whatever boost pressure you're running. So 20 PSI plus your pump pressure. You'd almost have to run an FMU on it in a way. But that's the only way you would reliably be able to cool the bulk of the air that you're looking at. The problem with this type of cooling system is that now you're introducing you're introducing even more mass to the system itself. And again, distribution becomes a major issue because now you've got so many different nucleation sites before that fluid in suspension hits your common plenum and then it hits a runner. You've got the turbo, which obviously at 78 or 80,000 RPM, turn your mower upside down and throw a water balloon at it, right? That's what it's going to do to your droplets of your hopefully atomized water meth combination. From there, you're going to run through the snail into your duct. Now it's going to go through your intercooler. So obviously you want to have your setup is going to have to be downstream unless you're going to overpressurize it or run the pressure up on it to make sure that you've got the right amount of mass of this stuff getting into the system to absorb any heat. But anyway, now let's say you didn't do it that way and you ran it before the turbo. Now you've got this stuff nucleated all over the inside of that intercooler. It's now coming out in droplets. It's not even atomized anymore. Completely inefficient at that point. Now it hits a common plenum. It's in big droplets. It's basically just slapping into whatever plastic it hits. Pressure and airflow is going to drive it down the runners, but your distribution at that point is going to be questionable at best. Again, it's just not what I would do with it, man. There's no sense in it on my, just looking at it. So let's see. Yeah, and I just don't like it to begin with. The spooky thing is you're not tuning with it, but yet you've got it in the system. So you don't tune on the meth, but if you tune on the meth, then you're still dealing with an added fuel mass. And that's the other thing. Meth injection works great if you're running on a carbureted setup. Meth injection works great if you've got, let's say you've got a super high compressor, like a 15.5 to 1 big block running through a tunnel ram. Meth injection might do well there, to not only for added octane, but to keep the cylinder temperatures cool. But I'm not a fan of meth, man. Every time somebody mentions it and every time I've seen it, the problem with meth is every time I've seen it in action, it has failed to perform the way that you would hope that it would perform. The controllers control it very well, but I just haven't seen it do cool meth things. Like on the Hellcats, perfect example of this is spraying meth before the throttle body on a Hellcat, and you pull the intake off of it, and there's just meth dripping off of everything, and you just go, I mean, it's what happened here? Anyway, it's a complete mess, and I wouldn't waste my time with it. Stick with E85, E90, whatever the case is, and let it ride at that point. Let's see. Hopefully that answered the question. Let's see. Queez is saying, if I had to go with another V6, I'd get the 3.7 Mustang. Great on gas and still pretty quick. Challengers are my favorite, but couldn't see myself in an SXT. I can understand that. And again, C10 Mob, thank you very much. Miguel saying, is it worth all the money to wide... Oh, I already got to that one. Sorry about that. Let's see. C10 Mob, thanks again, brother. Saying drive shaft, 1,400 horsepower axles, very good. Diff brace, 309 rear gear, dual fuel pump. F5 blower spacers, Innovators West 9% lower, catless pipe, 180 stat, rear control arms, drag pack. So he's thinking to combine either a 265 or 275 to achieve the goal. I don't want to be where Racer X is with struggling to stay in the 9-second range. No, you won't be struggling to be anywhere near. I mean, that's not a 10.0 car. With a 275 upper in the mods you just listed, that's a 960, 950 car in good air. I mean, that's just what they run. So, yeah, I wouldn't have any issues with that. In fact, in really crappy air, that's a 980 car. So, some weight reduction, which is your drag pack, pull the stuff out of the trunk. Yeah. And that car in bad weather runs 980s and good weather runs 950s. Mahayemi saying rods and crank to get the compression back down. Yep, absolutely. Well, not crank, just pistons, really, to get the compression back down. Let's see. Hang on just a second, guys. I'll make sure I didn't pass anybody else up. All right. But thanks again, C10, man. I appreciate that. Kevin Collins saying, hey, Mason, I think you're on to something with the E4 supercharger for the 5.7 because it's definitely cheaper to go that route than to get a cam. And it's definitely cheaper than buying a 392 car. Yes. And I'll tell you what, it's one of the most fun combinations that I've ever personally driven. And listen, I drive or I should say I have driven everybody's hot rod. Supercharged Mustangs, 1,000 horsepower to the rear wheels, Hellcats. 800 horsepower to the rear wheel of Hellcat. Very fun car, by the way. The NA stuff, my stuff, all of it. Trucks, resto mods. All of the ones that are really fast weren't really all that fun. But you take a 5.7 and put the E-Force kit on it in a good tune, and all of a sudden, man, that thing comes into its own. And like just like what y'all were talking about when I was talking about the 350Z when it's in its element, one of the most fun cars you can drive is a manual transmission 5.7 with an E-Force supercharger. Car is a lot of fun to drive. Just saying. Let's see. Dr. Div saying FIC 127 best injector ever. Absolutely it is. Jabril saying thanks for the answer. And is there a gain difference between non-MDS 6.4s and MDS 6.4 cam? I've heard weird things. You know, I've heard of that. There's no difference in power. I've heard there was something different with the load profile, but I've never actually seen that. So on the MDS lifters, it having a different load profile, I haven't personally seen that. They're both rated the same, and on the dyno, they both make the same power. So at the same point. So for that, no, I wouldn't worry about it. Get the non-MDS, convert it to Hellcat lifters, kill the MDS in the tune, and you'll be good. HE37 saying, you were talking about modding V6s earlier. I own a ProCharge V6 Mustang. It makes decent power, 420 horse on a Mustang dyno. It's good power. You don't get the low-end grunt compared to the V8. Expensive to mod. Well, yeah, that's kind of the whole point is that they're, you know, the 6-shooter band, you know, they're fun. They're different. Look, I get it. It's not for everybody, but when you've seen V8 after V8 after V8 after V8 after V8, the issue is really more annoying than anything else with the V8s. I want to see something different. I want to see something cool. Show me something that'll surprise me. And that's really where the V6s can come into play. You know, a well-sorted V6 with a ProCharger making about 400, 420 to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno is going to absolutely get some folks' attention, and it's going to be a lot of fun to drive. So, you know, it's different, and sometimes different is exactly what you need. So, Doc Div saying, cool, I use 78, talking about Lambda. That's exactly what I would run. Let's see. What is Wandy saying? This guy's throwing out a bunch of $20 words and only has $2 himself. I don't understand what that means. You're going to have to be a little bit more, oh, he's saying words he has no idea what he's talking about. Oh, well, give us some examples there, Wandy. Wandy. That's a cute name. Dr. was saying I'd spray 3 inches from the throttle body. Yeah, even with pulling that thing back. So we had one of the Hellcat Chargers on the dyno, and it was, God, when was this? Was like right before I left the shop. And the one that I'm thinking of is we're actually dialing in the, we're dialing in the controller, and we're dialing it in based on injector pulse width. And it was kind of cool in that, I mean, you could definitely see it coming on, and, you know, you're looking at the so you're looking at the wideband, you're looking at the data, the car was basically it was a 275 upper, Innovators West lower car. I mean, it did fine. Everything was fine with it. It was just one of these things where we're going, what I was thinking, I mean, I get the why behind it, but to me, I just didn't understand and I didn't see the point behind it. It seemed like it was something there for somebody to say that I've got meth injection, but I don't know. To me, it just seems like a pain in the ass to have to tune around. The other thing, this is the other thing I was going to say, by the way, to that question about meth. The other thing that spooks me about meth is we had a kit on the dyno, had one of the couplers. This is the owner of the car hooked everything up. They did a good job actually, but the connector failed underneath the car on the dyno. And so it was basically, it started spraying meth all over the dyno floor. And you can imagine how well that went over. So, it's little things like that that, you just go, God, with the threat of an issue, like that, spraying meth all over the place. Hey, at least it happened at the shop, right? It didn't happen going down the street, but still, that can be a little bit disastrous. Anyway, Arthur Wall saying, B. Mason, always appreciate you. Thank you very much, Arthur. I appreciate that. Let's see. Manicky saying, start your live stream up, Wendy. Oh yeah. Manicky's talking to Wendy. Yeah, where's your live stream, buddy? Let's find out what you know, man. What do you know about? Other than being a little bitch, what do you know about? Love to see and get some of your insight on whatever it is that you're criticizing. See, don't give criticism without direction. Oh wait, is criticism too big of a word for you? Maybe I should go to advice. Anyway, let's see. Maha's saying, time for a moderator. Yeah, no kidding, right? H237 saying, the problem with methanol injection is distribution. We'll talk about an intake design for air. So here, number one, yeah, the problem is distribution, especially when you're dealing with an NA car with either supercharging or turbos. The bigger issue that you run into is, well, like on one of these things where you've got two rotors. You can inject into the hat, which is what some guys do, but even with that, I just don't know how well it works. I mean, again, okay, so when we had, I'll put you like this. One of the weirder ones, you always get these weird cars that show up at the shop, right? One of the weirder cars was an LS, it was a 5.3 with a Maggie, showed up at the shop, and I was getting data on the car. And one of the things that I was rolling into the throttle and injector duty cycle spiked. I mean, it went to like 90% at about what I would perceive as about maybe 3/4 throttle. I'm going, what the hell is this? It really hadn't gone into boost that heavily at that point, and the way that they had their controller set up was based on boost. And so, I'm just kind of rolling through the throttle, and I never flash the throttle. It's a Maggie, so if you flash it, it goes into boost immediately, but it's just like any other car. If you kind of roll into the throttle, it won't really spike boost, and it doesn't really throw it into boost that quickly. So at low boost levels, it was seeing real high injector duty cycles. So I was going, oh, this is bad. Didn't have any way to monitor fuel pressure. So I had one of the guys that I worked with grab the fuel pressure gauge, hook it up. We taped it to the windshield, and I said, watch that gauge, and if it drops, let me know. So again, rolled into the throttle, fuel pressure looked fine. So got back around to the shop, and come to find out, yeah, it had not only it was the reservoir tank in the back of this Jeep was about this wide, about that tall, and about that deep, and basically the only thing keeping that engine alive was methanol injection. Now it was tuned and it ran fine. on meth injection, but it wasn't the right way to go about it. Let's just put it to you that way. Jabril say last one be for a full bolt-on charger RT with the NAG1. What do you believe is the best cam for an overall improvement throughout from start to red line without suffering low or top end? So, what would my cam specs be? I tell you what, Dr. Diff has a really good cam for that. It's I believe it's the Contender cam from him. It's not a real aggressive cam, doesn't have a chop to it, doesn't act up, but it is going to give an overall performance gain, especially above 2,500 odd RPM. You don't want to throw the kitchen sink at the car in terms of cam unless you're going for a sound and unless you're really looking to spread that power out on the big end. That also causes some tuning issues as well. And, you can sometimes get cars that want to push through lights. You can get cars that just are a little bit unruly all the way around. So in that respect, I would say, especially when it comes to the Hemis, less is more. You don't have to go very aggressive to get a modest or at least a moderate gain in power without suffering any drivability. And again, remembering the fact that these cars are heavy. NAG1 has less mechanical advantage than the 8-speed does. So even with that being said, you can still throw a cam at it. I would stick with something less than about, I wouldn't go any more than about 216 on the intake side. As far as duration goes at 50, mainly just to keep the thing to keep it tunable and to keep it livable. So anyway, there's my advice. Check his stuff out, though. I think you'll like it. GS1 saying, what makes my 392 Charger go 1190 at 118? Good air. Let's see. Catalyst 99, GS1 1320, a set of drag radials and taking out the seats. Yeah, that too. I'm talking full weight. Hey, Catalyst, thank you very much. He's asking, is the trans brake something that can be installed or does it just come on the transmission? So you would have to have it installed. I don't think, well, no, actually on the HP 90 and HP 70, Dr. Diff, you're going to have to step in on this one. Because launch control is available, but not the actual trans brake. That capability is not available with HP tuners yet, I don't believe. So basically it puts it into, drive and neutral at the same time, which locks it out. Normally, like on a turbo 350 or a turbo 400, something like that, 727 torque flight, that would be something that you would put on. It would be a secondary bit of kit that you would put on the transmission. But with these being electronic and everything's run off of solenoids, you could technically do it electronically if it's an automatic. If it's a standard, then yeah, it's just something that you would wire in and something separate. It has nothing to do with the transmission at that point. GS1 saying, I'm talking full weight. I'm open to a wet N2O kit, by the way. So look, there's a lot of guys that with their 392 Chargers have gone very deep into the 12s. Weight reduction for sure, but full weight, okay. Going to have to go with a drag pack. It's going to kill a little bit of weight, but that's it. You're going to need to drag prep it. You're going to need to get you're going to need to get whatever's in the trunk out of the trunk. You need to get your floor mats out of it. You need to get everything out of your glove box. I mean, I know all this stuff is nitpicky, but this is everything you're going to need to do. Prep it for the drag strip. Again, drag pack, wheel and tire setup. If you want to go nitrous, you can go with a standalone wet kit. Nitrous Works, or Nitrous Outlet rather, makes a pretty good kit for that. It's a little bit pricey though. A solid tune, a set of long tubes, all of those are going to go fairly well and fairly far to get you to your goal. But again, Comes to the Charger, it's going to be a little bit tougher because you've got to go with fairly aggressive tune. Maybe put a race gas tune together for it, and that'll get you even closer. But just wait for December and then get it out there. But again, Catalyst 99, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Doc Div said, I'd let you rip on my truck. I love that truck. It's a badass truck. He's laughing. GS1 saying, why insult the creator? I get that stuff all the time, man. People sitting around, they ran out of Jergens, so they got nothing better to do. Smoking Up 5 saying, when are you going back to the track? As soon as I get some tires. So I've got to get some tires for this thing. But I've been a little bit tied up. I've had, obviously the truck, trying to get that thing sorted out. Every time I touch that thing, something falls off of it. So, but hey, we got brake lines, calipers, and it's going to Dr. Diff here pretty soon for the trans and for those leaf springs. So, hopefully we get it back soon. And then, I don't know, maybe Doc Diff can run into somebody that's got an aluminum intake and a carburetor. What do you say, Doc? Anyway, we're trying to do this thing on a budget too. The main idea behind that truck is, building something that I would have been able to build when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, just like everybody else, broke as hell. So it's got to be done on the cheap, but there are some things that really do need to get done to that truck. Even though the engine's probably not in the best shape, a little bit of blow by, but it'll run just fine for a long time like that. And like I said, it needs a 4-barrel anyway. So, if that engine's going to end up getting rebuilt, or if I'm going to end up putting a 383 in it or something like that, then, we're going to have some kind of an induction system. So, and whatever we can do to mitigate vapor lock, that's the idea. Let's see. T saying, Subby, what are you fellas talking about tonight? Well, we started talking about, what's to get excited about new cars. And really, it's a good point. I think we need to get this kind of brought back around to really what's, what we were talking about earlier. What vehicles are you going to get excited about right now? What vehicles kind of get your blood moving? To me, there's very few. One is the prospect of the 400Z, which, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of Nissan. Every car or truck or whatever that I've ever owned from Nissan, I've loved. 400Z would just, maintain that, that mindset. Everything that they've ever made that I've driven has been sporty, responsive, felt great the whole bit. Like I say, I love my 350Z, but now they're talking about the 400Z. If you haven't heard about it, check it out. It's definitely worth a look, because that car, depending on what it ends up being, power plant wise, could end up being something that is extremely attractive to guys that want to get away from a Hellcat or away from a Scat Pack, or maybe they came to a Scat Pack from a 350Z or a 370Z, and they kind of mirror Mopar a lot in a lot of what they do. Their Halo car, the GTR, is the baddest of the brood in terms of what it does, just like the Hellcat variants. But their NA has been left on the vine to die, the same way that Mopar has left the 392 on the vine to die. And there's nothing in between, by the way. So, it's like a microcosm of everything that's going on with FCA. And strangely enough, they're talking about coming out with this 400Z, and the silhouette is gorgeous, by the way. That thing, in whether they've got it shadowed, it's just, just the shape of it, I can already tell you, I'm just going, oh shit. But anyway, that's one that I'm really getting excited about, because if it is a 4-liter V6 or 4-liter inline 6, whatever it is, that's going to be awesome, because the power is going to be there. I'm thinking, 360, 390 horsepower. Maybe it is 400 horsepower. Maybe that 400 means 400 horsepower. I don't know. Nobody knows right now. But that's one that I'm really getting excited about. The other one, of course, is the Bronco for all the reasons. But the big reason is this. They're doing something that Dodge simply isn't. They're staying true to their core customer. They're staying true to their core supporters in that you've got the Mustang, which is infinitely upgradable, right? The darling of the aftermarket. Will take the fervor that everybody's got for the Jeep, move that over to the Bronco, and look at what you have to play with. A platform that has got the 10-speed automatic, a 2.7 liter making 300 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque. You can upgrade the engine, make it 400 horsepower and, probably, or not, say 380 horsepower and, 480 pound-feet of torque. Plenty of power. You got everything there that you could ever need. The doors come off of it. The roof comes off of it. It looks the part. It does everything really well, but the power is there, where the Jeep just has nothing to talk about when it comes to horsepower. So you take what the Jeep doesn't have, and the fact that the Jeep never has done anything really exciting, and folks have said, well, what about 392 Jeep? 392 Jeep doesn't exist. It's not ever going to exist. I mean, like I say, don't hold your breath. And what I was saying earlier to you is this. You notice that we had the Hellcat already, the Hellcat Jeep, they already showed us that. Well, we're doing that in the aftermarket for a while now. It's old news. But then they're going to show us the 392. Okay, well, aftermarket has been doing that for a while too. And again, not only old news, but it's a step down from what you've already shown us. You notice they've never shown a 5.7 Jeep, and my argument to that is, why show it? They would never show it because it is a feasible thing. Like if you showed a 5.7 Jeep, everybody's going to go, oh, fine, perfect, finally. You're making a V8 for the Jeep. And they're not going to do that. They're going to show you some pie in the sky stuff over here. All the meanwhile, with their left hand, they're going to just not do anything, keep the V6 alive. Yeah, sure, it's a 285 horsepower V6 with an 8-speed automatic. It runs and drives fine, but look, it ain't 300 horsepower and it ain't 400 pound-feet of torque. And that's the point that I'm getting at. Oh, and by the way, the aftermarket is slathered up, man. I mean, foaming at the mouth to get their hands on the Bronco. It is going to be every bit as upgradable as the Jeep. And some guys are going to go, well, it's got independent front suspension and the Jeep doesn't. And nobody cares about that. All right. The Bronco is going to do just fine. It's going to be an off-road powerhouse. Who cares that it doesn't have a solid front axle? Okay. All right, Moab, let's just back off a little bit here. Sorry, we can't all have the technology of a, wagon, but the fact of the matter is it's going to do just fine for what you would ever want an off-road vehicle to do in this respect. I mean, Range Rovers have been doing just fine with that setup for a while. Hey, Land Cruiser want any part of that too. So, but anyway, that's kind of what we're talking about. And is there another vehicle to get excited about? In other words, is there anything else floating around out there that you can say, oh, yes, that's what I'm looking forward to? The only other car out there that I was mentioning, unfortunately, isn't a Dodge. It's the Mach 1. And this is what we haven't gotten to yet. Y'all heard me talking about this Mach 1 for a while and how much I like the Mach 1. Still trying to figure out why the Ford guys are all pissed off and bitter about the fact that it's got 485 horsepower instead of 520. I mean, dude, it's not the Voodoo motor. It's not going to make Voodoo power. But the fact of the matter is that, yeah, it's kind of a parts bin car. And you can see that, look, this is a verifiable net horsepower gain of, 20 horsepower when you run that tune with that intake. It's a different tune. It's a different operating system. It's a different whole setup. And the car runs great. 285 horsepower, 10-speed automatic. Get the thing with a 355 gear, and guess what? Now, even the Scat Pack Core or the 1320 has got to watch its ass because that car will be coming for it. And you can say, well, you can buy a Mustang and you put a tune on it and you put the intake on it. Doesn't matter. This is coming from the factory. You can build anything. Again, we start talking about mods again. I don't want to talk about modifications. I'm talking about the factory actually doing something that makes sense, that they're supporting the people that are supporting their brand. And for the brand loyalists and for those that are in the know, that Mach 1 makes sense. Now, you say, well, it doesn't have a shaker hood. Well, neither did the 71 Mach 1. Not every Mach 1 had a shaker hood. And I know that the SN95 car had a shaker hood. Fine. It still doesn't take away from the fact that it's a great car, and it kind of puts them on the map, front runners in terms of naturally aspirated straight line performance. It's kicking Dodge off the podium for straight line performance. If you want to mention the 1320, how many 1320s have you seen at your local drag strip? 2? Fine, that's great. How many scat packs? 30 on any given night if it's a busy track? The point of it is this. There are only a few cars that are out right now that are really worth talking about. One of them doesn't exist. One of them has been announced. The other two have been announced. And one of them, we've known the specs for now for just a little bit. And here's the problem. The two that are worth talking about, the two that have been announced, they're Fords. They're not Dodge. And I know everybody's talking about the big reveal with the super stock and all this other stuff. And yes, I know I screwed the name of it up twice on the beginning of my super stock video. It just goes to show my level of contempt for that car, though. I don't care that it's got the Nitto drag radials and the wheels from a Demon. What pissed me off the most about that car is that FCA put out the marketing blurb, this is what they said, the only muscle car available with drag radials. And of course, my rant when I got all sideways and twisted up about that. Semantics, 20 versus 21. Well, you know what? You still buy a 1320 today, and that marketing has already been out and released to the public. So yeah, if I had a 1320, I'd be mad as hell over that. Feeling very well disrespected, if nothing else. So anyway, that's the kind of ongoing WTF, mate, when it comes to Mopar. It's like they get part of it really, really, really right, but the other side of it, they just get completely really, 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 really wrong. And that's the side that can affect sales. That's the side that offends and affects your loyalists and your most fervent supporters. So anyway, moving along. Just one saying she's a big girl. I know. Yep. GST 1320 saying trying to beat my 04 Cobra's time and trap speed. That's going to be tough. That's one of my favorite cars, though. Dr. Diff checking in. Oh, yep, there's how to get a hold of him. 409-553-0759. Call Dr. Differential for all your speed needs. Saying although our Joker sounds best and makes great power. So that cam, Joker cam, is it's originally designed as a nitrous grind, and that's why I call it the Joker, but it is a nasty little cam in the 5.7. So get a hold of him for that. And let him know. Yeah, Dr. Duke saying you can play with launch control. The problem with playing with launch control is that the problem with launch control is that it kind of sucks in these cars. So, I mean, I can do what's just the power. I can throw boost at it, but it's just not power reserve. But nah, it's not worth it. Just foot brake it, let it rip. Saying, but you cannot add a trans brake, but launch control works great. Let's see. Thank you much for the GS1 saying just a pulley tune and cat back. His car went, the old Mustang went 1195 at 117. I tell you what, that was an 1195 at 117 back when an 11-second car was fast. I mean, a car that would run high 11s at even anywhere over 116, 117 miles an hour was a fast ass car on the street. So, yep. Let's see. 17s, I got some Hoosiers. Let's see. Oh, Arthur's checking in saying B Mason, the new 400Z is supposed to use the VR30 DDTT V6. Oh, cool. 3-liter turbo V6 from the Infiniti. It's definitely going to make at least 350 wheel horsepower. I prefer Infiniti's NAV6 from 0708. Good engine, by the way. VH35HR, the high rev motor. Yep. Fun engine, by the way. Let's see. Calisani said, I'd be excited if they just combined the Hellcat with the 1320. I'd be excited if they just gave us a aluminum block or something, anything for the NA guys. But anyway, a little over 2 hours right now. Let's see. Just one saying, I feel 130 to 140 mile an hour car is a new goal these days. I got to tell you, man, not to be that guy, but after being there and doing that and being involved in different aspects of motorsports too, autocross, closed circuit, motorcycle stuff, finding something that's fun and balanced and enjoyable is really tough. And I got to tell you, the cost of the thing starts to play into the role too, as far as fun and everything else. And that's really where that, in this case, we were talking about the 400Z, that's where that car starts to play. Because you can have fun with it. It's not going to overpower every situation that you put into it. You can have fun and not have something that you feel like is trying to get you arrested and incarcerated. So in that respect, it's going to be an awesome car. And I think a lot of folks are looking at all of these Hellcat variants, and there's folks that are looking at it that have owned them and they're kind of over it. It was neat, it was fun, but they're starting to move past it. And they're looking for something newer. They're looking for something maybe a bit more nimble. They're looking for something that maybe they came from, keeping in mind hardly any of the modern Mopar owners are originally Mopar brand loyalists. Their family may have owned Mopars or something like that back when they were a kid, and you even have to be old enough to have parents that were old enough to be a part of that particular generation, or grandparents that were part of that particular generation. But they're new Mopar. The problem is that Mopar is not doing a great job of retaining those kids. They're not giving them something new. They're not giving them their own car. Whereas, on the other hand, Ford is kind of doing that. The Bronco, in this case, is timeless. The doors come off of it. The roof comes off of it. It's got plenty of power. What's not to love? The Mustang is low price, high return on performance to the dollar when it comes to that platform. Very difficult to mess with. And of course, it goes on up through the GT500. But the idea here, dealer markup notwithstanding, is that you can have something that goes fast, is exciting, does a lot of cool things, but it doesn't break the bank. Well, then you got Mopar. And the problem with Mopar is that, they are fast. They're impressive when it comes to the Hellcats, the 392 cars. They're very quick. First NA car mass produced in the 11s. There's your 2015 Challenger. All of these things that they did so very well. Well, there's no free lunch. And so what you're running into is guys that have moved over to Mopar because it was such a departure. Big torque, big acceleration numbers, especially through the 8th mile. All but untouchable in the 8th mile. In fact, I don't think there's anything that can jack with a Mopar in the 8th mile. you can gun them down on the big end, but Chase is a racing. You got to have some legs, brother, to catch one of these things. And if you can't catch him before that line, doesn't matter how fast your car is. That's where Mopar did so well. And that is such a departure from what a lot of guys had before. Understanding that most of the modern Mopar owners are previous Ford owners. Not that many Chevrolet, but a lot of previous Ford owners, a lot of Nissan owners, a lot of Toyota owners. All went from, some Toyota sports car, or, well, not really sports car, family car, because again, they see this as a true American muscle car, or they came from like a 350Z background, which is no torque, buzzy, nice, fun V6 that, carves corners well. The exact opposite of what this thing is, or what its NA counterpart with the 392 would be. But now that they've had it for a while, and now that they've lived with it for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they're starting to, the charm is wearing off. And at that point, you start to look at it and you go, well, maybe if there was just something better than what I had, but more like what I had, maybe that's what I would want. Or maybe I want something that's such a departure, but I've driven the Jeep, and the Jeep's kind of it's not really a turd, but it's just SUV-ish. And the only thing that is special about it is maybe the way that it looks, maybe some of its capabilities. But anyway, that's where these arguments are going. That's where that internal dialogue is taking these guys. And so when they start to look at vehicles like the Bronco or like the prospect of a 400Z with the styling and everything that comes along with it, and oh yeah, guys, listen, let's not forget about the Supra. How about the Supra? There's one at the drag strip on a tire, not a drag pack, just he's running an ET Street R, just tuning. Real pretty little white Supra too, man. I am in love with this car. 11 O's at 126 miles an hour. 11 O's at 124 miles an hour. All night. Every night. Hot, doesn't matter. Cold, haven't seen it in cold weather. But I know in hot, sticky weather, 11 O's with just a tune. Let that sink in for a minute. 11 O's. Just a little bit of work done to the thing, and I think you paid $46 for it or something like that. So, yeah, pretty badass little car. And, no nitrous, boost only. 11 O's at a good mile an hour too. And you talk about something that, I'm not looking for the 400Z to be able to do that. I'm kind of looking for it to do that. But the idea is, okay, are they going to go head to head? That would be so awesome, because it would be my two favorite Japanese cars having at it. So, I don't know. I win either way. But again, it's just something fun to think about and to talk about. But it's notice we're not talking about Mustangs really, and we're not talking about Camaro at all, and we're certainly not talking about anything from Dodge. So when we're talking about what's there to get excited about, unless you've got a project that you're working on that's your own pet project that has nothing to do with the new stuff, there's really nothing new to get worked up over. And until we start to hear about the new Viper, or Dodge decides to do maybe something realistically cool with the Jeep to keep pace with the Bronco, maybe we get a Honcho out of the deal. That would be stupid sick. You want to talk about, why Dodge hasn't brought that look back is beyond me. Best looking full-size truck ever. Most butch looking full-size truck ever for sure. How is that thing not just a thing right now? To that point, so I've got Sierra, right not far from where I live. There's a long bed Honcho, dude. And I'm like, God dang it. Had I only known. You want to talk about a sick swap, dude. Do a 5.7 with an 8-speed swap in that thing and just call it good. Freaking A. 400 horsepower with an 8-speed. Maybe throw a little bit of nitrous on it just because. But, anyway. We can dream, can't we? Let's see. Edward's saying, hey, B, I've talked to you a few times about my 13 SRT8 6-speed. Had the broken valve spring. Talked to you about the tune and other mods. Finally got to the track and was disappointed. 1320 at 107. Well, sorry to hear that you're disappointed. It's probably the worst time of the year to be taking a car to the drag strip. But 13.2 at 107 really isn't all that bad. You think about it, especially with a 6-speed car. Let's see. I can't remember if you got yours tuned or what all was going on with yours. So, let's see. HU37 saying the Pentastar is reliable, good running engine. It lacks torque. You don't get the throttle response that you get out of a turbo or 4.6. Oh, he's saying he'd like to see Mopar do a turbo or inline 6 for the Jeep. Look, I don't know if an inline 6 would fit underneath there, the way that that engine compartment looks. I mean, I got one sitting right over there. But what I will say is do something with it. And my God. Okay, so that engine, even with the 285 horse, is utterly gutless. This is a perfect example, guys, of horsepower not meaning what you think that it means. So I had, with my sister's looking for a Jeep, and test drove a 4-door manual 285 horse Jeep. That engine makes great horsepower if you buzz the thing up past 4,000 RPM. But below that, like where you need a Jeep to be functional, there's no torque. Now the automatic runs pretty good, but that manual was torture. I mean, you get that thing in 5th gear at like 40 miles an hour and floor it, and I think it slows down. I mean, it is terrible how much torque that thing doesn't have. Ken's, Edward's saying, granted, track was no prep. DA was like 2,700, but at 450 wheel horsepower on the dyno, had back seats and speakers out, I was sure I would get into the mid-12s. Now my friends who ran usually mid-12s were running 13s. That's what I was saying, dude. Run your car at the worst possible time. I mean, you run anywhere in the 13s with that setup in this weather is actually not bad, man. Just wait for the weather to cool off a little bit. I think you'll have a whole lot better results with it. Kim McDavid saying, I hope the Bronco has better results than the Bronco 2. So what is this, the Bronco 3? I think it's actually like the Bronco, it's like a prequel, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, saying, do you have any experience with the Arrington short or long block Hemi engines? Yes, I do, quite a bit. Good engines, just make sure that you get the right one that you order. That's how I know. Something that happened actually after I had left the shop. But no, they're great. I mean, they're really good short blocks. They do a good job with them. They're not Barton or anything like that, but they're fine. They're good. Their 426 is good. It's one that we used quite a bit. So, yeah, if you have any reservations, don't have any reservations about getting any of those Arrington engines. They're actually really good. There's only one company I would say stay away from, and that's A2 Speed. In my personal opinion, and in my personal experience, I've had some bad experience with those guys. Let's see. Josh was saying, hey, B, I dream of a Hellcat Power Wagon. Dude, you know what I would love is a Hellcat Wagoneer. Yeah, that's my thing. Mopar fam saying, what is happening, everybody? I love it. What's up, Mopar fam? So I was checking in saying Dodge just needs to drop the CUDA already. I was at the Nationals in Ohio. This was years ago, and that's one of the only cars I got excited about. Felt like a kid again. So, you know, to that point, you know, you guys know the story about me talking to Mopar Marketing that it's been a little bit ago, but was able to have a real long, real good conversation about where primarily for the Viper, because that's my thing. You know, I've owned 3 of those cars, and you know, my deal was, where's the Viper? Where's the Viper going? You know, what market studies are you guys currently? I mean, I was kind of digging into some of the deeper stuff with the guy that I was talking to. Really good guy too. But also, you know, where is Mopar going? Where is this whole thing headed? And you know, when it comes to the CUDA, everybody's being tight-lipped about it. The funny thing is, they're being a little bit too tight-lipped. It's a little bit too clandestine for my taste, and a lot of people are getting really antsy. They're either looking for a halo car with that CUDA nameplate. I just don't know, and it's hard. The problem with it is that if they need to drop the CUDA, what is it going to be? Is it going to be built on the Giulia platform? Or are they going to leave the LX platform, you know, the LA, whatever platform together? Are they going to completely revitalize that Giulia platform? Is it going to be like what I was talking about earlier, like an NA version of the Ferrari developed engine? You know, high compression though, like 11.5 or 12-to-1 compression. You know, what is it going to be? You know, we don't even know what it is. And this myth of the CUDA is starting to really kind of take on a life of its own. The rumor mill can basically churn out whatever widget you want it to turn out when it comes to, you know, just what ifs, right? But the fact of the matter is that if you look at what most folks have said about the CUDA, it was basically Viper version 2.0, and it was going to be something that was going to have a much more mass appeal than the Viper. It was going to appeal to ladies as much as it was to the guys. And now we just really don't know what to expect. And look, tick tock, brother, clock's ticking. If I were to buy something today, if you were to just say, look, you have the clock's run out on the Hellcat, you got to get something else, I wouldn't know what to get. What would you get? It wouldn't be a new Vet. The new Vet really is not my cup of tea. I mean, it looks good if you put wheels and tires on it and stance the thing out a little bit, but it's just not my bag. And then you get into the GT500, it's like, oh God, no. I've heard some horror stories about that car. So no. And not to mention, I don't have any empirical data on that thing whatsoever to even speak about it. I mean, the next GT500 I see at the drag strip will be the first, and I'm there pretty much every other weekend. So tells you how many of them have shown up to the drag strip. I don't know what I would buy. Would I wait on the CUDA? I mean, what do you wait on? The super stock's not going to get me to the promised land, especially if I've already got something that's basically freaking faster than the super stock, at least in advertised numbers. And even if we're talking about corrected base numbers, this thing goes 50s in the heat. I mean, if this thing runs at 60, I'm like, oh my God, I broke the thing. So, it runs 1050s. So what? And this is another case of them just wearing out the idea that Hellcaticizing everything is going to make it better. It's not. And I'll take it one step farther. The Hellcat formula was lightning in a bottle in 2015. It is still, the Hellcat to this day is still the yardstick that everybody measures their car against in the quarter mile. Not for roll racing, it's terrible at that. But in the quarter mile, this is the car that everybody is going to compare theirs to. Even the Red Eye compares themselves to the Hellcat, not the other way around. So anyway, just looking at it realistically, based on advertised numbers and everything else, I don't know that I would go with Mopar right now. There's just nothing that really gets me worked up. and you know, you guys have asked me what's my favorite car that I've driven. Like one of my favorite driver's cars was Alex's Z06, the C7 Z06. I love that car. So, you know, something along those lines, maybe, if that's what the CUDA is going to be, or if that's what would be a fair enough, and you know, something analogous to what the CUDA might be, then I guess I'd wait on the CUDA. But I don't know, man. There's some stuff that's looking pretty tempting. I don't know. What do you guys think? Anyway, getting back to it. Let's see. Oh, damn. Yarmir, hey, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Damn, thank you very much. Saying, can you just slap on drag rims and tires on the rear without any mods to anything? Of course you can. Talking about drive shaft, axles, etc. If we're talking about Hellcats, absolutely. There's a lot of guys, especially with the later Hellcats, 16, 17, or really 17, 18, 19, and 20s. They got a little bit better drive shafts. So in that respect, yep, they're running out there bone stock with a drag pack and just having a ball. I know a lot of guys running with 15s and 16s that are just stock drive shaft, and they haven't had any issues with it on a drag pack, no less. So yeah, you can absolutely throw them on. I would suggest, if at bare minimum on a stock car, if we're talking Hellcats, maybe looking at a drive shaft, but I don't know that it's necessary. If you get the car into wheel hop a lot, though, that's kind of what will tear up a drive shaft. So just know that going into it. Like something aftermarket like a DSS is going to be a little bit more robust when it comes to that. But it's got to be the latest version of what they've got out now. Do not buy a used drive shaft. There are some NVH issues, that's noise, vibration, and harshness issues with those drive shafts. So you know, you may get some vibration out of it. People have different levels of tolerance for it. Apparently, my level of tolerance for it is very, very, very low. So, you know, just buyer beware. That's all I can say with that. Now, if we're talking about the NA stuff, don't worry about it. Just put the drag pack on it, get it out there, and enjoy yourself. You'll have a riot. But Yarmir, man, thank you very much. I appreciate the contribution. I really do. Thank you very, very much. Let's see. Mopar fam is saying his dream car is a Hellcat 300. Why don't they do that? UAE has the 6.4 300 right now. Australia has the 6.4 300 and we don't. But we got a Hellcat Durango. Okay. Let's see, he's asking, will it be safe to run a Pro Charger on a non-forged Hemi 5.7? Yep, not a problem. Just keep boost down and keep the tune fairly conservative. You'll be just fine. I mean, they run... okay, so arguably the E-Force kit would be harder on the engine because you get more torque down low when you're trying to overcome inertia. Pro Charger is actually easier on the internals than a positive displacement supercharger by a significant amount, by the way. That high dwell time at high piston, the high dwell time at high piston pressures and high temperatures is what causes the ring lands to pop, among other things. But on a 5.7, you'll be fine. Mopar fans also asking, do you think Edelbrock Gen 3 Hemi heads are worth it on a daily driver 5.7 Hemi? Nah, not really. I wouldn't even worry about it. Hold what you got, brother. Hold what you got. Not for a daily. Mopar fans asking, what's better in your opinion for force induction for a Hemi, twin screw or centrifugal supercharger? Depends on what you're looking for. For me, I like the twin screw better than the centrifugal. The top end rush really isn't there with these engines the way that you would like for them to be. And the reason for that is because you're not going to be coming to the table with the type of boost that you need to get the top end rush out of the centrifugal supercharger. My opinion is that unless you're running 10 pounds of boost, a centrifugal is not going to do you any good. And really, you need to be at least 10 pounds of boost. I mean, 6, not going to get you where you want to be. It's not going to give you the same rush. Whereas a twin screw is a little bit different story. What's cool about a twin screw or any type of positive displacement supercharger is that it makes the car feel like it just has a much larger engine in it all the time. And that's the fun part about it. Basically, you take a small block, you put a positive displacement supercharger on it, and now you got a big block. That's how this works. And because of that, they're just a lot more fun to drive. And there's no waiting around for the torque in that part. Here's the big part. Don't think of horsepower or performance at wide open throttle. Think about horsepower and performance at just driving, like the performance of the vehicle while you're just driving it, partial throttle, tip in, torque response. That's what you're looking for. That's where you cannot even remotely play in the positive displacement supercharger's backyard. Turbos can't do it. Nothing will respond the way that one of these blowers does. They make the lowest actual maximum horsepower, but a lot of cases they make the highest average power across the board. So that's why I say go that route. And if you want a centrifugal supercharger, I hate to say this, man, but you're gonna have to do a dedicated build for it, and you need to be turning somewhere around 6,800 RPM, and you need to be making about 14 pounds of boost before it's going to get real interesting. Let's see. Mopar Fam's asking, what can upgraded coil packs do to a Hemi? I'm just learning about those. Nothing, really. You're not going to get much out of them. The stock coils are actually really, really, really good. We use stock coils on big boost applications. Don't have any issues with them. Doc Div saying, I'd be all over the new Vet. I want one so bad. GS1 saying, new Super 9 seconds with $5,000 in mods. That's kind of what I'm talking about, guys. I mean, look, I'm not playing around when I say how much I like the Supra and how much I am probably going to be in love with the 400Z. So, just saying. Would I buy a Durango Hellcat? No, I wouldn't. It doesn't tick off any boxes for me. There's nothing endearing about it. There's nothing inherently cool about it. It's just throwing more power. I mean, I would be cooler if they had a 700 horsepower minivan. Yeah, something neat, something stupid. Yeah, that's what I want to see at this stage of the game. A 700 horsepower Durango, I mean, it's another SUV with 700 horsepower. We already got the Trackhawk, and it's arguably a better car than the Durango. And they're only going to make it for a year? What's the point in that? For those lucky enough to have the exclusive opportunity to... Whatever, man. Seriously, we're talking about a freaking Durango. Exclusive. Man, this... FCA desperately needs me on their team. I swear to you. For the next 30 years, I would have them so locked down it wouldn't even be funny from a marketing standpoint. Listen to me. Anyway, Arthur Wallace saying, if they can get that Barracuda down to 3,700 pounds with maybe an updated Hemi architecture, it will be top dog. Yeah, it would if they can get the weight down. It's gonna have to have its own dedicated platform though to get there. And whether it's a Hemi or a significantly hot rodded version of the Julia's V6, I don't know, but it's gonna have to be something completely different than anything that they've got in their lineup right now. That's for sure. Calisine, I'd say, right, it's hard to get excited about forking over 50 grand if you don't know what the CUDA might be in a few years. Well, if it's even going to be anything in the next pick a number of years. And that's really the other side of this. We don't know what's coming down the pipe, number one. And number two, they're not being all that engaging when it comes to what's coming down the pipe. Listen, nobody asked for the super stock. In fact, the name itself is already screwed up. All right. First of all, the Demon is the closest thing to super stock that you got. A street legal hot rod, right? That's really the only super stock that you have. The super stock that you have now, oh, by the way, arguably even the Demon isn't really a super stock, because by rights, my car is more super stock than the super stock. And you go, well, how the hell can you say that? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Let me explain to you why. First of all, this car sitting behind me has nothing but a bunch of Mopar parts. It's got a 309 gear out of a Scat Pack. It's got the rear seat delete out of a Red Eye, and it's got a drag pack wheel and tire setup on it. Aside from that, it's the lightest weight version of the Hellcat. In other words, it's a stripped down version of the Hellcat, at least as stripped down as you could get it in 2015. So in that respect, I guess you could say it's the lightest version. And it doesn't have fender flares or anything else like that to weigh it down or to get in the way of airflow or anything like that. So by that, it's a parts bin car with a tune-up. So yeah, I guess that's super stock, because that's kind of what super stock was back in the day. Anyway, my point of it, I just got super sidetracked. Nobody has asked for and nobody wanted the super stock. Again, yet another $70, $80, whatever $1,000 car that doesn't have anything with what should be your core buyer. Age demographic, 21 to 45 for the NA stuff. Younger guys that don't necessarily have the money to just throw at an $80,000 car. You know, you keep pandering to the old folks or people that have a lot of money for these hot rods, but you're not doing anything for the grassroots racer. And that is the biggest problem of them all. For whatever reason, it doesn't matter. I don't care what fiscal responsibility that you have, or what is or what isn't or can be or cannot be developed or developed based on whatever statutory emissions BS you want to throw at it. It makes no difference, because your grassroots racer only cares whether or not he or she is winning or losing. And the Mach 1 is going to be showing its taillights to quite a few folks that are driving Mopars, and they're not going to like that too much. You got to fix what's broken, and what's broken is not keeping up with the Joneses when it comes to this fight. So anyway, getting back to it, HU37 say, what about Mopar developing a 3,800 pound car that handles and appeals to the masses? Ain't gonna happen. That's not part of their business model. But maybe they can do it under another name. Maybe they sell it under the Maserati name. Maybe they bring the price down, market it a little bit differently. Maybe it's done under the Alpha name. I don't know, but something along those lines, but not have it cost, like I say, $60, $70, $80,000. It's got to be somewhere around that 40, 45, tops 45 range. Let's see. Oh, Queasy's saying, where's the likes? Y'all like the stream, please. Oh, yeah. Hit the likes. Always forget about that. Like, subscribe. You haven't done so already. Listening to me ramble on for 2.5 hours about Mopar stuff and cars that I like. Edward Shaver's asking, how about a Duster? Keep muscle car era looks, 3,500 pounds, and revamping the 392 intake piston supercharger or turbo, keep it in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. Use a European influence, maybe all-wheel drive. See, the problem with that is they're not, oh man, there's so many safety and emissions and all these other different types of regulations that you got to throw at these things to get them to act right. The biggest issue I think here is probably going to be just the overall packaging of the thing. How are you going to market it? All-wheel drive doesn't play to red, white, and blue USA. It just doesn't really play too well with that. But what does is big cars with big engines doing big, long, smoky burnouts. I mean, if you can just keep that recipe, rinse and repeat, that's what they're going to do. Haven't you noticed with everything that they're introducing with a Hellcat engine? And by the way, why isn't it the Red Eye? Hold up for a second. We ain't even talking about the Charger Red Eye that was released at the same time that everybody seems to be forgetting about. But why is it the Hellcat platform? How many Hellcat engines did they make? I mean, they're still making them, right? I mean, it's not like they had these things just laying around going, God, we got to do something with these 15,000 Hellcat engines we got just laying around. They sell every one that they make. There's nothing separating the Red Eye from the Hellcat aside from the size of the blower and the injector size. Maybe the fuel pumps. That's it. Why is it always the Hellcat? Well, because the Hellcat gets the job done. I guess the Hellcat's doing all the heavy lifting. Again, the reason why the Hellcat is still the yardstick that everybody measures themselves against, even Mopar themselves. Let's see. Destroyer 1320 is asking, how do I fix the transhift issue on my 1320? It hits the limiter at times, and there is a delay shift if left in auto mode. I feel the computer should catch that. Thanks for the info, Professor Mason. Does it have an aftermarket tune on it is my first question. The second question I have is, are you running well, it shouldn't really matter with that car. Predictive shouldn't get worked up if you're running a drag pack. I'm not sure. I've never run into that problem with the NA cars. That can happen. That can happen if you're running a significantly shorter tire in the rear, which will mess with predictive algorithm, and it'll cause it to delay the shift. And you'll notice it maybe on your first or second pass, but it won't do it after that. A lot of times that's kind of the symptom to that. The other time it'll do that is on highly modified Hellcats, and it's part of the tuning process to tune that out. And you can only really tune it out on a prepared drag strip. So, and the car's got to have drag pack. It's got to have good track prep, the whole bit. I mean, it's actually a bit of an ordeal to get them to act right. In some cases, some cars just yip on the. It's called it's a yip is what we call it, and it'll rev out and then it'll throw power back at it, and that's when I put it like this. When this car was stock, that's when I knew I was really on a strong pass on the drag pack, because it would yip on the 1-2 shift, and I was going, oh hell, that's just gonna be a good one. Although I would lose a little bit of ET, I knew the car was gonna run pretty good, but. Anyway, if your car is stock, that's kind of weird. If it's tuned, then you've got some rev limits that you need to play with. One of them is going to be in the transmission. The other one is going to be in the engine, and those need to be bumped up by about 700 RPM. Basically, any of your rev limits need to be kicked up by about 700 RPM. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, Doc Div's saying that Grand Cherokee we did last week, lean them out and add some timing and tune up the knock retard up to about 1.9 to 2 volts. Oh, I mean, yeah. Okay, so you know the protocol is 40%, and I don't like going above that. But you see my tune, shit, I don't even go, I mean, the latest tune on mine, through peak torque, I think I'm at 25%. So, what we're talking about is 25% neutered. I'm a sissy bitch when it comes to knock sensor sensitivity. I mean, you can kick them up to that level. would prefer to stick with the protocol, stick with the recipe, and roll out at about your max of 40% across the board. Or, I mean, you could only run 40% across the board at 3,000 RPM and above, basically where the converter is going to flash to, and leave everything else at stock. That's another way you can do that. So, let's see. Doc Div saying 11.0s or lean out. I would lean it out on 11.0s a little bit. I would probably go command across the board, go like 78 or 79 lambda. You'll be good. Destroyer 1320 saying, hit the light. Yeah, hit the light. Joseph saying, advice when building first gen 5.7. Ooh, well, first and foremost, valve seats. Sorry, man, but you got to do something with the valve seats. Those things start seeing a lot of heat, a lot of real hard heat cycles, and they can drop a valve seat. So I'd start from there. But I mean, it's just like any other engine. Stick with what works. Keep the cam, depending on what you're building. If you're building a truck or a car or whatever, keep the cam relatively conservative. A little bit of work on the intake, but you're going to need an exhaust system because the earlier Hemis had terrible exhaust systems. So depending on what you're building, you can either go with a set of 6.1 manifolds, just the SRT manifolds, or long tubes. Prefer long tubes to be on the car. And a catback. And I mean, you can kick it up, a fairly decent amount, but I mean, the cam and everything like that is going to start to get a little bit pricey. So, let's see. So is saying that he has a 73 Duster with a 340. I've seen a couple swap with a 5.7, but if they do it, I'd like to keep that 70s body style, maybe a little revamp it just a little bit and keep it looking classic. If they can make it work and still be safe, that's the other thing. I mean, look, a lot of people complain that these cars are heavy now because they have all this extra stuff on them. The extra stuff is to keep the meat sack that's riding in it from dying if it gets into a crash, because these things can go so fast now. So it would basically be the original Duster would be like a 7/8 scale version of what the end result would be. It'd be like the Challenger versus like a 70 Challenger. If you've ever seen this car up against, or next to, I should say, an original Challenger, that Challenger can fit inside of the shell of this car. No problem. Mopar fam's asking, can I use an Edelbrock Victor 2 EFI intake on my NA300C Hemi? Yeah, I believe you can. As a matter of fact, you may need adapters, but I believe you can use that intake on that engine. Never had anybody try to do it. Never even heard of somebody going that route. Typically, that's the 15 and up guys doing that. But it should bolt right up. I don't think it has to have adapters, but it might. Hang on a second. Oh, man. Hang on a minute. GS1, thank you very much. He's saying they will never listen to the little people. Man, ain't that the truth? Certainly won't ever listen to me. Let's see. But yeah, no, that intake, I don't even know if it would do you much good. I would, if it were me, I would go with the 6.1 intake before I'd go with the Edelbrock, man. Just my O2 on that. Arthur's saying, yeah, I prefer Roots type and twin screw superchargers over Pro Chargers and Cinti's, but Cinti's are still cool though. I like them. I mean, they have their place, but the only time they really work is when you turn up the wick pretty high on them. Again, low boost levels, you don't get anything out of it. I mean, it'll push the power out a little bit. It'll make a little bit more power, but it's just not going to be as fun as something that you just whack the throttle and it starts to light the tires up immediately. I mean, that's that's where the positive displacement supercharger wins the argument every single time. And yeah, you do that with a turbo, it's yip, and it takes off, but it's just not the same thing. And with a turbo like that, there's always this elastic band feel, like you're waiting on something, and then this big boost kicks in and pushes you, where the positive displacement is just always there and it's always strong. Mopar fam saying, have them bring back the 300 SRT. They need to bring it back from overseas. They've got it. Ethan saying, hey, Brian, hope all is well. What is the deal with the Hemis and high RPMs? I've seen 5.7s get 274 cams, custom cams, and they pull really well through the RPM. Is the Hemi a high revving motor? It's just whatever the intake will allow. I mean, the 5.7 does well because it has especially if you're running the truck intake, or if you have a truck, if you're running the 6.4 intake. Look, that intake is great for a smaller engine. It just kind of sucks for the 6.4, but it works great on a 5.7. It's one of the reasons why the truck intake is actually a really decent intake on those engines, as well as the truck 6.4 for that matter. But they'll turn a decent RPM. The only problem that you have is if you run that kind of cam, like a Comp 274 with a stock intake. It's a fixed runner length. It doesn't do all that great. It'll try to pull to, 7,000 RPM, but the intake is the restriction at that point. And so you get this really weird, like from your point of view, you'll get this really weird flattening out of the power band. And when you flatten out horsepower, you're hemorrhaging torque, because horsepower is a mathematical function of torque. Whenever you flatten it out, that means you're hemorrhaging torque, and when you hit your shift point, you're going to fall back on a lower torque number. It's actually, you should be shifting it once it hits its peak. Doesn't matter if it carries it, shift, and that peak is only there for overrun. So, I'd say you probably want to go with a different intake. In fact, you are going to want to go with a different intake. Get a 6.1 intake if you're going to run a Comp 274. On a 5.7. That's why none of my 5.7 grinds are anywhere near that big, because it's already been proven over and over and over again. It just doesn't play out. It doesn't play well at the intake. Plus, you're giving up too much torque down low. So anyway, kind of gives you an idea of how that plays out. Mopar fam's asking, is an open element CAI useful if you have a ram air setup on the hood and underneath the car? I wouldn't say it's useful. What I'll say is that it's going to be sucking in less hot air. But the reality is that you're going to need a lot of scoops to try to feed that thing cooler air, or at least to cool down the under hood temperatures to make it work well. The problem is with the Mopars, the way that the packaging is here, there's no good way, especially with the NA cars, there's no good way to get that botch where my thumb is right there. That's about where your filter is going to be. There's no good way to get it fresh air. The TA did a decent job trying to make that hood scoop work, but the hood scoop does a great job of keeping the intake manifold cooler, or in this case, trying to cool down the case on the supercharger. It does a pretty good job of that, but trying to use it to redirect airflow, it's just not in that great of a spot. So I would say no. And let's see. Dr. Div's asking, do you want to sell me the Recon? The Recon? Oh, you're talking about Revlon. Oh, no, I don't think I'm going to sell Revlon. It'd take a lot for me to sell that car. Ethan Axe saying, do Scat Packs do well with E85? Not particularly. Is that not mod, or is that mod not better with let's see, is that mod not better with higher compressions? It obviously works better with higher compression. The higher compression, the more that's going to do well for you. The problem with E85 and the 6.4, it's a little bit to do with compression. has more to do with the fact that you're just not, your cylinder pressures up top just really aren't that high. If you ever look at one of the power graphs, they kind of go up and then they kind of fade off to top. It's not like they go and just keep racing on. I don't know. I would probably argue that your dynamic compression isn't high enough. It's not just the static compression, but dynamic compression isn't high enough. To really utilize that the E85. And even with an aftermarket cam, you'll see some gain, but not a ton. I would say you would need really like a 12-to-1 motor to start seeing, kind of like the Mustang, somewhere around 11.5, 12, you need at least another full point of compression before that E85 is really going to start to take effect. Oh, Edward's saying Dodge Shadow twin turbo V6 all-wheel drive two-door built about the size of a GTR. That'd be kind of cool, actually. That'd be a cool old school reference too. That's a good call, man. I like that. Doc Div saying at Ethan Hack saying I have E85 runs good, even NA, just not high gains. Yeah, I mean it'll run fine. It'll run great on it. It just doesn't. You're not gonna see huge gains out of it. He's Ethan saying his rear O2s went out on his 5.0. Bummer. Destroyer Gray saying stock tune. Or Destroyer 1320, sorry, saying stock tune. Ethan saying, do the rear O2 sensors matter on the DOHC Coyote, or can they just be ignored and forgot about? Well, I lose power. Well, you don't want to ignore them. If you ignore them, you're going to get a check engine light if they're not working properly. You need to have them turned off in the tune. They don't necessarily, I don't think they pull any power though. If they're reading, if you're going to check engine light because you don't have the O2s plugged in, I don't think you're going to lose power necessarily. But I mean, you just don't want the check engine light for sure. Let's see, stock Destroyer saying he's got the stock tire on the car. Mopar fam's asking, what are my thoughts about the RIP Supercharged 3.6 Mopars? They're fine. I mean, make decent power. I mean, 400-ish on a Mustang dyno, maybe. On a good running one. Most of them, I think, were like 385, 390 horse. So they're not bad. Let's see. All right, guys, we're coming up on almost 3 hours. I may not get to all y'all, but I'm about to have to cash out here pretty soon. Let's see. Adam's asked about MT-01s 315 4020. I don't know what the question is, though. Mopar Fam's asking... 86 Face on YouTube is beating Hellcats with his SXT Challenger that's RIP Supercharged. You should check him out. Tell him to come out to the drag strip and let's see what he does to old Revlon. It's pretty easy to beat a Hellcat on the street. All you got to do is have a car that doesn't make that much power and run it on a drag radial. These things, especially if you don't know what you're doing, if you're driving it on stock tires, it ain't even worth the race. And that goes to my point. Hellcats, if you're driving them around on stock tires, you'll get waxed every single time you try to race anything. It has nothing to do with RIP Supercharged. Doesn't mean shit to me. What I'm talking about is it's power to weight, terrible tires. It could be a V6 stock. My 392 on drag radials versus this car on drag radials would gap my Hellcat 0 to 60. Now, after that, I mean, it goes like this. I mean, I'm just going to eat that thing alive. But on 0 to 60, it is the easiest car to smoke on the street. So, talking about anything beating a Hellcat on the street is like, yeah, that's probably the easy. I used to go sniping after Hellcats. So, and with my vet, I mean, I couldn't buy a roll race with a Hellcat with my vet. So anyway, not to get all, hyper about it, but the fact of the matter is that, I always hear about, well, so-and-so's got a rip-tuned V6 and they're smoking everybody. Never seen him at the drag strip. Never see him on a roll race. Never see him doing anything really like that. And 420 horsepower to the rear wheel isn't smoking anybody unless they're getting out of it on a 0 to 60, running it on drag radials up against somebody that doesn't know what they're doing with a Hellcat. And even if they're an experienced driver, you're going to be pedaling that thing. And if they shut down at 60, like, we're going to race 0 to 60s. These things don't even start taking deep breaths until about 100. So, yeah, I hear that a lot, man, about, the rip tune and all this other stuff. And it's just like, guys, you want to talk about a nasty car, one of the nastiest cars, since we're talking about supercharged cars and modded. What the fuck? Oh, Junebug. One of the nastiest cars to play with on the street is a very well prepped 5.7 car. You get somebody with a 5.7 car with a 370 gear on a drag radial on the street, he can flat foot that thing coming out of the hole. That car with an Edelbrock E4 supercharger kit, same guy can still flat foot that car out of the hole and will absolutely put a hurting on any 392 and any Hellcat that he rolls up on, up until they start to stretch their legs a little bit. 392 car may have a hard time catching him. A Hellcat won't. And that's Skeeter, I'm telling you. But and it won't have a problem catching him and passing him. But the reality is that they're going to be very difficult to mess with on the street for that reason. Lots of manageable power. And that's why so many people get so annoyed with the Hellcats, is because they bought it because they thought they were going to be, this, badass car in the street, only to find out that you have to learn how to drive the thing. From the factory, it's a 10-second car. You can't send that out into the world on all seasons. You know how stupid that sounds? Anyway, it's one of the weirdest things. Putting a car with this much power and this much gearing, by the way, out into the world with those types of tires is beyond crazy to me. Just watch my acceleration videos when I'm running drag radials on the car and you'll know why. Adam's asking, do I think methanol kit is okay with these superchargers? I'm not a fan of it. Also asking, and can you get away with a 285 upper pulley on pump gas? You can get away with it, but you've got to have a tune that is very geared to that 285. And I would never go any smaller than a 285 on the street. But you're asking me, can you get away with it on pump gas? Depends on where you live. Is that 91 or is it 93 octane? If you're on 91 octane, I would say no. I wouldn't do it. I'd go 295 would be the smallest pulley I would run. 285, yeah, you can get away with it on 93 octane. A lot of guys do. But again, you got to be able to speak Mopar. And here's the thing. I'm not worried about the car right now in the middle of summer. I'm worried about that thing when it gets cold outside. I don't call my track event Moparmageddon for nothing, because we have it in the middle of winter. And I mean, these cars are making a lot of power. You're right in the flat, big, fat part of boost weather. So yeah, it can get a little bit nutty. Adam's also saying I have a 309 rear diff, carbon fiber drive shaft, intake, long tube catback, ID 1000 injectors. It's got the pumps, Innovator West harmonic balancer, pretty much full kit's what it looks like. What do I recommend for your next upgrade? A roll cage. It looks like you got pretty much everything locked in, man. Just depends on how. I don't know. We talk about your next upgrade. Whatever you want to. What are you doing with the car? Are you roll racing it? Are you drag racing it? Autocrossing it? I mean, it all depends on what you're doing to the car, but you've got a lot going on. Be careful with your carbon fiber drive shaft. I've seen those explode basically because of the weight of these cars. The 309 is going to help that, though. It's going to help take some of the load off of the drive shaft, but at your power level, that still may not matter. Innovators West is a good kit. I like it. Running a 12 rib. You got NT01s. I mean, I don't know. Do you want to do drag racing? I'd go with a drag pack for sure. But, and we got guys hooking up with that setup. We got guys hooking up on just your standard set of Dark Stars too. So I think you'd be fine. It's what I run on my car. But I don't know. It depends what you want to do with the car. Mopar fam saying, I thought the Edelbrock Victor EFI manifold was just like the 6.1 design. No, it's a little bit different. It's got a little bit larger cross section than the 6.1, but I don't know that that really helps you until you start really getting some bigger displacements. I've seen it run on 426s. I've never seen it run on 5.7s. I've never even seen it run on a 6.4 for that matter. Mixed results, man. Guys that have run them on 6.4s have slowed down. They'll show a little bit of a gain through the mid-range, but typically they'll fall off on the big end and fall off down low. So when it comes to the 6.4s, it's tough to beat the stock intake for average power. But if you want to build big power, you know, an extrude honed 6.1 will kind of get you there, but I don't know, man. It just... you're going to be fighting a battle that is never ending and you'll be throwing money at it left and right. It's best to just build around the parts that you have, and until the aftermarket comes out with an intake manifold that really works, 6.4 is the best you got. Mopar fans asking, which car is heavier, Impala Super Sport, Mercury Marauder, or LX Mopar? LX Mopar is significantly heavier. Especially if you're talking four-door to four-door. Queasy's asking, do you think the 11 to 14 Mustangs are a big compromise as far as interior space to a Challenger? I'm still young and single, so no kids. Oh, you'll be fine. 11 to 14 Mustang's a good car. It's a efficient use of interior space, more efficient use than the Mopars. Although the Mopar does have a little bit more space, the Mustang does better with what it's got. Kim McDavid saying, my Red Eye with 500-pound weight reduction hits rev limiter often on stock tune. Irritating. That would get irritating. There's no reason for it to do that. Hits the rev limiter? Yeah, that would get on my nerves real hard. Mopar fam saying that June bug though. Yeah, no kidding, right? Adam saying he's already smoked a drive shaft. Let's see. Ed was asking, just curious, why don't you Hellcat guys run the 391 dip? It would be way too much gear. These things are already hard to hook up with the 309 that I put in it. Not to mention you'd be running out the back door in a much higher gear too. It just adds in another shift. Predictive algorithms would not like it either. So it's too much power, and with that much power, the gearing would actually hurt you. The car would slow down with the 391 gear. Unless you started off in like second gear or third gear for that matter. HU37 say, 86 Faces beating SRTs, not Hellcats. This car is making 500 rear-wheel horsepower at 14 pounds of boost. He has every mod imaginable and just blew the head gaskets. Yipes. Adam's asking, if you had a choice between doing port and polished heads or nitrous kit, which would you do? Well, you're going to get a lot more out of nitrous than you will out of heads. And you got to remember, these Hemi heads already flow a lot. I mean, you're not getting to the head flow restriction yet. You're dealing with a intake manifold restriction and possibly an exhaust manifold restriction. So I would go, I'd go nitrous all day. Even 100 shot's going to do a whole lot more than than porting or doing anything with the heads. You don't need to polish them, but porting them is not going to do you a whole lot of good. Mopar fam's asking, which supercharger will be easy on my internals in my 5.7 Hemi daily? Pro Charger. Pro Chargers are real soft on components, but they also have a soft power delivery too. So, it's not going to be something that's going to blow your hair back. How do I solve the valve drop issue on an 030857? The shop needs to send the heads to a head specialist, and he will put in new valve seats. Adam's saying, so nitrous or methanol? I don't like methanol. You can do nitrous. I don't know what your goal is. I'm not a big fan of methanol, but it just depends on what you're looking for. If you want more power, then yeah, throw a small shot of nitrous on it. But methanol, not a big fan. If you're doing nitrous, do a standalone kit too. That's going to give you the best results, the best tunability, and that's going to put you in the best place in terms of reliability as well. And also in that kit, you can run, whatever fuel you want. You can run race gas in your nitrous standalone fuel cell. So that's typically what I've seen. Most guys will go to that and never look back. Let's see. Make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. All right, guys, we have gone over 3 hours. I got to check out. I want to thank all of y'all for hanging out with me tonight. Take a couple more questions, and I got to split. Let's see. Mopar fam saying, what's the real issue with 0957 and 2011 64 MDS or lifters? It's a flaw in the lifter design. It's also a flaw in the metallurgy of the lifter itself. The bearings are what fail, and what can happen is some have said improper oiling of the lifter itself. Others have said that it's not that it's an issue with the actual metal. I think it might be a combination of the two. It mainly affects cars that idle for long periods of time. However, on my 2014 Ram, that truck rarely idled, and it had the same problem. So, it's kind of hard to say. I can tell you that the later cars, especially the cars 17 and up, 18 and up in particular, do not have that problem, at least not that I've seen. Not as often, I should say. And with our fleet trucks, that's the other thing. We start turning those trucks in at 250,000 miles. The last one we turned in was at 270,000 miles, and that truck still ran like a top. So, keep in mind that our fleet trucks are all Dodges, all Hemis, all quad cabs, all tradesmen's, all 323 gears. And, they get beat on mercilessly and run great. Like I say, all of mine's a 17 with 100,000 miles on it, coming up on 100,000 miles. And mine's just a baby by that standard. Like I say, we start turning them in at about 250. Haven't had any of them have any issues. So, and before that, we had Fords and didn't have any issues with the Fords either. And all of those trucks were the crew cab 5-liter trucks, 355 gears. Let's see. Adam's saying, thanks, bro. You got it. Appreciate it. Got the arm flex. I like it. Adam's saying, I smoke GTRs and Porsches on the road courses. I like it. Joshua's checking out. Dawson's checking in saying thanks. But hey, guys, I want to thank all of y'all very much for hanging out with me this evening. Y'all stay safe out there. Keep wearing your mask. Keep washing your hands. Slather up in that hand sanitizer. Again, thank y'all very much. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. God bless. Y'all have a great one. That is a wrap on this one, guys. Adios.